Chapter 80. That day, Chu Qingyan didn't know when Xiao Su had left. She only knew that his eyes had been deeply engraved in her mind. He said that he was her pillar of support in the princely manor. As long as he acknowledged her, she would be the head of the household, and no one would dare to bully her. So, did that mean that she had been acknowledged? She didn't know why, but her heart surged with indescribable joy and relief. Clap, clap, suddenly, a pair of large hands appeared in front of her, clapping vigorously in front of her, giving her a fright. "Father, can you stop appearing and disappearing so mysteriously?" Chu Qingyan woke up from her memories and looked at the person in front of her. She couldn't help but chide him in amusement. Father Chu pouted and muttered to Mother Chu behind him, "Dan Yang, I don't know why Kai Kai is always in a daze. She doesn't even play with me." Mother Chu was holding a needle and thread in her hand, her head lowered as she embroidered. Hearing this, she smiled gently. Kai Kai has grown up and has her own matters to worry about. Just don't disturb her. Father Chu was very unhappy when he heard this. He turned to stare at his daughter. "Kai Kai, how can you keep things in your little heart? Hurry and teach father." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat when she heard this. Ever since the last time she mentioned to Xiao Su that her parents should come to the princely manor to play, he had people bring her parents to the manor every day to keep her company. However, he had ordered her father not to disturb him when he had nothing to do. Because the day before yesterday, her father had run to the study to look for him and had almost turned the study upside down. When she thought of Xiao Su, she couldn't help but think of the matter of the assassins that the Sichuan emperor had ordered him to investigate. Although Xiao Su had caught all of the assassins and brought them to justice, they were all death warriors. Once they were caught, they all committed suicide by ingesting poison, so all the clues were cut off. However, the Sichuan emperor was not satisfied with this result. He scolded Xiao Su before letting him go. As a result, Chu Qingyan did not have a good impression of this Sichuan emperor whom she had never met before. Thinking of the assassination, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but think of Xiao Ran. Ever since Xiao Ran failed to deliver the pastries last time, he had been reporting to the King of England's residence every day recently, and every time he came to look for her. She was annoyed at first, but in the end, she couldn't be bothered to brush him off. However, as they got to know each other, they came to know that this prince was a famous little genius in the Sichuan kingdom. At the age of 2, he was already familiar with the 4 books and 5 classics. At the age of 3, he could recite poems and eulogies. At the age of 5, he could compose a 7-step poem. At the age of 8, he proposed to control the flood, which was imitated by the neighboring countries. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for the 4th prince. It turned out that under this good-looking skin, there was real talent and knowledge. It was just that his conduct was a bit lacking. However, he was a proud son of heaven, so it was normal for him to have a bit of arrogance. Speaking of the devil, Chu Qingyan had just thought of this person when he had already appeared in her room. "Chu Qingyan, this prince has come to see you." After getting along with each other for a few days, Xiao Ran had already promoted her from a stinky brat to a full name. Xiao Ran was dressed in brocade robes with a piece of jadeite hanging from his waist. Looking at the light green luster shining under the sunlight, it was easy to guess that it was priceless. What wind blew this distinguished guest in today? Perhaps it was the young man's persistent visit, coupled with his undisguised sincerity, but Chu Qingyan was still softened by him. She was no longer as perfunctory towards him as before. Chu Qingyan's parents didn't find it strange to see Xiao Ran. In the beginning, Chu Qingyan's mother was a bit reserved, but after seeing him more often, she bowed to him and went back to doing her own thing. "This prince thinks it's the mango style." As he spoke, he waved his hand to the person behind him. The person behind him came forward with a basket and lifted the lid, revealing bright yellow fruits inside. When Chu Qingyan heard him mention mangoes, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Mangoes were everywhere in the modern world, so she could see them everywhere. However, in ancient times, she couldn't even see mango leaves, let alone mangoes. When the cloth was lifted, she saw mangoes the size of a fist. Chu Qingyan was instantly delighted. Where did you get these? Seeing her smile, Xiaoran's originally anxious heart immediately relaxed. His heart was filled with joy, but he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he pretended to be indifferent. These are the fruits offered as tribute by the Western tribes. This prince thinks they're quite fresh. I think a country bumpkin like you probably hasn't even heard of them, so this prince casually brought a few over for you to try. The palace servant holding the basket lowered his head upon hearing this. The fourth prince's lies were truly smooth. The Western fan had only offered a single basket of tribute. The fourth prince had coaxed and tricked imperial concubine Yu and expended a great deal of effort in order to obtain these few. Chu Qingyan saw his expression and knew that these fruits weren't easy to obtain. Although they were rare in ancient times, she had eaten many of them in the modern world. However, she still felt grateful. Many thanks, fourth prince. However, it seems like these fruits are very rare. Fourth prince, you should keep them for yourself. How can this prince take back something that he's given out? Also, this prince has several baskets in his palace. Xiaoran said nonchalantly. Seeing his insistence, Chu Qingyan accepted them. Then, she instructed Xining to peel the fruits and bring them over. Xiaoran originally wanted to show off how to eat them, but he didn't expect that Chu Qingyan knew even more than he did. Not only did she explain in detail, but she also knew to use a bamboo skewer. He immediately felt defeated. After she finished instructing him, Xiaoran asked in confusion, "You've eaten them before?" Chu Qingyan clearly sensed his disappointment and couldn't help but shake her head. "No, I've only seen them in some books." "But aren't you illiterate?" Hearing her answer, Xiaoran was clearly happy. However, he was puzzled by another matter. Chu Qingyan coughed lightly. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have lied in order to save his face. She immediately changed the topic. "There's nothing strange about this. There are drawings in some books. I just saw that the drawings were similar to this fruit. I just made a random guess." "Oh right, you didn't leave the palace today to sneak out again, right?" Although Chu Qingyan changed the topic abruptly, Xiaoran still didn't notice. He said in a self-satisfied manner, "That's not true. This prince submitted a thesis that the grand tutor was satisfied with today, so mother gave me a day off." Chu Qingyan facepalmed. So this person came to the prince's estate for a vacation? Not long after, Xining finished peeling the fruit and brought it to the table. There were even bamboo skewers on top. Xiaoran immediately took a piece and called out to Chu Qingyan. "Hurry and try it. See if it tastes good." Chu Qingyan couldn't refuse his good intentions, so she took it. Meanwhile, Father Chu, who was playing on the side, kept his gaze on the two of them. He snorted coldly. He was going to tell his son-in-law. Chu Qingyan took a bite and felt that the taste wasn't bad. It would be even better if it could be iced. She raised her head and saw that Xiaoran was waiting for her evaluation. She couldn't help but smile. "Your Fourth Highness, this taste is very unique. You should also try it." Xiaoran immediately beamed with joy when he heard this. What's not good about this prince's gift? Chu Qingyan saw that this youth finally had a smile that should be on his face at this age and couldn't help but smile as well. However, Xiaoran turned around and cried out in surprise. "Where's the mango?" He came here from the palace in order to let Chu Qingyan eat it as soon as possible. He hadn't even had a bite yet. Now, he didn't even know what the mango tasted like. Chu Qingyan followed his gaze and saw that the table was empty. The plate of mango had already disappeared. Xining coughed lightly. She didn't see anything. She didn't see her husband take the plate away. She didn't see anything, and that plate of mango was already on its way to the study. Chapter 81. That's right, that plate of mangoes was taken away by Father Chu. At this time, he was filled with anger. His eyes were wide open as he stormed towards the study. He had come to this study many times. Most of the time, he came to play with the scallion upside down, but the scallion upside down always left him to play by himself. The person guarding the door of the study was unfortunately Turin. Turin had left the palace a few days ago and only came back today. He wanted to have a good rest, but he was tricked by Huo Ling to help him on duty, saying that he wasn't feeling well today. Turin doubtfully agreed. Because he hadn't been in the palace for a while, he didn't know what was going on in the palace. When Father Chu walked over, he immediately shouted coldly, "Who is it? What do you want?" Father Chu saw that the person guarding the door wasn't that brat Huo Ling, but a stranger. Although he didn't recognize him, he knew that he was someone close to his son-in-law, so he acted familiar and said, "I'm here to find my son-in-law." Black Impermanence quickly opened the door. Because he came back today, he hadn't changed out of his black casual clothes. Turin looked down at his clothes and his eyes twitched. Impudent. Impudent? I'm not impudent, I'm not impudent. Quickly let me in, I have an urgent matter to find my son-in-law. Father Chu waved his hand at him. Seeing that this person's mind wasn't clear, Turin suddenly had an impression of this person. Wasn't this Chu Qingyan's father that he and Lord had seen when they visited the Chu family at night? He heard that he was as dumb as a child. Now that he saw him, it was true. Turin didn't like Chu Qingyan to begin with, so he spoke coldly at this time. The study is an important place. How can an outsider like you enter? Quickly leave, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. Father Chu felt that this person was really stubborn, but he was guarding the door of the study and looked like his martial arts weren't weak, so he said unhappily, "Black Impermanence, I already said that I want to see my son-in-law. Why are you blocking me? I'm not the one who wants to see you. Do you not know my identity? Who do you think you are?" Turin retorted. Mr. Chu didn't seem to notice the mockery in his words and smiled proudly. "You'll be scared to death if I tell you. But I won't tell you that I'm Lord's father-in-law. You can ask White Impermanence secretly." What was the White Impermanence? When Turin thought of the white-clothed Huo Ling who liked to look at ethereal, his eyes twitched. No wonder Huo Ling wanted to trick him into working here. He must have known that he would meet this troublesome Father Chu. "If you don't leave, then," before Turin could speak, he heard a cold voice coming from the study. "What's the commotion outside?" Turin paused when he heard that. Mr. Chu took the opportunity to push him away and rushed into the study. He shouted, "I have good news and bad news for you." The person in the study was holding a weasel bristle between his fingers and was about to throw it at the intruder, but when he heard the familiar voice that gave him a headache, he immediately stopped and looked at the intruder with a cold expression. "What's the matter?" Xiao Su looked at Turin when he said this. Turin was a little annoyed that he didn't stop this weak Mr. Chu. He cupped his hands and said, "Master, this person wanted to rush in without any explanation. He said he had something to talk to you about. I didn't let him in, but he kept pestering me." "I didn't pester him. He didn't let me in." Mr. Chu looked wronged. Xiao Su knew Mr. Chu's temperament, so he didn't pursue the matter. He asked, "What's the good news and bad news?" He also knew that if he didn't get to the point with Mr. Chu, he would probably talk for a long time. Mr. Chu was surprised. "Son-in-law, how did you know what I was going to tell you? You're so smart. You're like a roundworm in my stomach." Turin's face darkened. Who was shouting so loudly just now? Xiao Su was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Say it." Mr. Chu didn't care about anything else. He smiled and was about to say something. But when he glanced at Turin, he suddenly glared at him. "I'm only going to tell you these two things. No one else is allowed to come close." The Earth Spirit was instantly enraged. This person was clearly returning the words that it had said to him just now. But he wasn't worried at all. His master wouldn't let him leave for a fool. "But, Turin, get out." Crack, Turin's face suddenly froze. Yes, master, he answered woodenly. Turan couldn't believe it at all. He walked out in a daze. Don't forget to bring me some food, Mr. Chu said to Turan with a smile. After he left, Mr. Chu turned his head and saw his son-in-law looking at him coldly. He couldn't help but shudder. But soon he straightened his chest. His son-in-law was like a block of ice, but his heart was warm. It didn't matter. He didn't believe that he couldn't melt him. Say it. Xiao Su played with the brush in his hand. He casually leaned against the back of the chair and closed his eyes. He didn't look at the people below. Mr. Chu smiled. Do you want to hear the good news or the bad news first? It's up to you, Xiao Su said indifferently. Then I'll tell you the good news first, Mr. Chu said happily. The big tabby cat in the mansion gave birth to a litter of kittens. There are 7 of them. I'm so happy, so happy. Xiao Su already knew that his good news wasn't valuable. He said casually, congratulations. He didn't care whether his son-in-law was listening or not. Mr. Chu was happy for a while. Then he suddenly became serious. Son-in-law, there's another piece of bad news. What is it? Xiao Su still said casually. Someone is eyeing your wife. She's going to be taken away. Mr. Chu said seriously. Xiao Su's indifferent mood was slightly stirred by his serious expression. A corner? A corner in the prince's mansion? It's your 4th younger brother. He's a rich man. He always comes to the mansion to look for Kai Kai. He even sends gifts to please her. Look, this is what he sent. Afraid that his son-in-law wouldn't believe him, Mr. Chu took out the plate that he had been carrying behind him. It was the mango that Chu Qingyan had lost in her room. Mr. Chu had almost eaten it all along the way. Now there were only a few pieces left on the plate. From his description, Xiao Su couldn't associate the word rich with his handsome 4th younger brother. But he unconsciously listened to his words. Seeing that his son-in-law seemed to be a little concerned, Father Chu immediately patted his chest and said loudly, "But don't worry, your corner is very sturdy. I'm old but strong, and I'll guard it for you with a hoe. If anyone tries to steal your corner, I'll beat them up with a hoe." Xiao Su suddenly smiled faintly, and the coldness in his eyes dissipated a lot. When Mr. Chu saw that his son was looking at him, he thought that his son had taken a fancy to the mango in his hand. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Son-in-law, I originally wanted to use this fruit to reward you for working hard to support the family. But I accidentally spilled it. Also, your mother hasn't eaten it yet. Xiao Su was misunderstood by his father. The corners of his mouth stiffened. When he saw the yellow fruit shavings at the corner of his mouth, the corners of his eyes twitched. In the end, Mr. Chu happily took the plate back. He also took the brush that his son-in-law was playing with just now. Chapter 82. After the Chu couple left, Xiao Su finished dealing with the matters in the study and walked towards Yushuan courtyard. Before he arrived, he heard laughter coming from inside. He frowned and stepped into the room. Xiao Ran, who was amused by Chu Qingyan's lame joke, saw his eldest brother coming in from the corner of his eye. He casually greeted him. Eldest brother, I didn't expect Qingyan to be so knowledgeable at such a young age. Xiao Su walked to the pear-wood chair in the room and sat down. Xiao Ran was clearly in high spirits. He repeated Chu Qingyan's joke to his eldest brother. Eldest brother, a banana was walking on the road. As he walked, he got hot and took off his clothes. Guess what happened to him? Ha 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 ha, Xiao Su, Xiao Ran, ha ha ha, I can't take it anymore. My stomach hurts from laughing, Xiao Su, Xiao Ran, ha ha, in the end, he fell down. Ha ha ha, isn't it funny? Xiao Su didn't comment on his crazy 4th brother. Chu Qingyan, she never knew that Xiao Ran was so easily amused. Fortunately, she only told him one joke and didn't tell him all the jokes. Qingyan, tell me another one. I've never thought that this kind of story was so funny. Xiao Ran said to her rudely. There were still 2 drops of tears at the corners of his eyes. They were from his laughter. Chu Qingyan clearly didn't want to talk to him anymore. Xiao Su calmly glanced at his second brother, who was staring at Chu Qingyan's dead body. He recalled what Chu Qingyan's father had said earlier and picked up the teacup beside him. He tapped the lid of the teacup and said thoughtfully, I heard that Imperial Father is going to check your writing and archery homework. Hearing this, Xiao Ran's smile disappeared, and his expression was no longer playful. That's right. 3 days later, Imperial Father will test me on my writing and archery skills. Next month, it will be my chess skills. Xiao Su lowered his head and drank a mouthful of tea. The fragrance of the tea spread in his mouth and tongue. It was sweet, but it was slightly bitter when it went down his throat. He said unhurriedly, your mother has always placed great importance on your homework. In the next few days, you should stay in the palace and practice. Otherwise, if your grades aren't good, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to leave the palace. Xiao Ran originally wanted to protest. Even if he didn't practice hard, his grades wouldn't be bad. However, when he thought of his mother's strict requirements, he couldn't help but shut his mouth. He secretly looked at Chu Qingyan. If she said that he should visit her more often, he would definitely fight for the chance to come find her. But why was her gaze always on the weasel hair brush in his hand? Thus, Xiao Ran said angrily, I know. This subject brother will go back and practice hard. After saying this, he left without looking back. When Chu Qingyan looked up, he was already gone. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Why did he leave just like that? He didn't even say goodbye. However, there was still a big Buddha in the room. Chu Qingyan thought about how her father had just come back from outside with a plate and a weasel hair brush in his hand. If she remembered correctly, this was the weasel hair brush that Xiao Su used the most. She didn't know if her father had gotten into trouble again. She braced herself and handed over the weasel hair brush in her hand. I got this from my father. I'm sorry for causing trouble for you again. You can play with it. Xiao Su took another sip of tea before replying. Chu Qingyan scratched her head, I can't accept a reward without any effort. How about I also tell you a joke? Xiao Su didn't comment. Seeing that he didn't reply, Chu Qingyan took it as a silent agreement. The first day, the little white rabbit went fishing by the river. He didn't catch anything and went home. The second day, the little rabbit went fishing by the river again. He still didn't catch anything and went home. On the third day, when the little white rabbit just reached the river, a big fish jumped out of the river and shouted at the little rabbit, You little bastard, if you dare to use carrot as bait again, I'll beat you to death. After Chu Qingyan finished, she couldn't help but grin. However, when she looked up and saw that Xiao Su was sitting there like a pine tree and wasn't amused by her joke at all, she couldn't help but doubt herself. Could it be that her ability to tell jokes had deteriorated? Or was his ability to laugh too much? What about the fourth day? Xiao Su put down his cup and asked. She didn't expect him to ask, but this question. Chu Qingyan was in a difficult position. On the fourth day, the little rabbit still used carrots to fish. Xiao Su didn't wait for her answer and continued. This time, it was Chu Qingyan's turn to widen her eyes. Why? Because the little rabbit only had carrots at home. Xiao Su said seriously. Chu Qingyan was instantly thrown into disarray. When it came to the king of awkward silence, it was none other than the person in front of her. The next day, Father and Mother Chu were brought over as usual, but this time, they brought a few children. Chu Qingyan looked at Madame Xing and Madame Wang in front of her and frowned slightly. However, she smiled and greeted them politely. Second aunt, third aunt, how have you been? Madame Xing and Madame Wang were originally unwilling to come to King Ying's residence because they had always felt that Xiao Su's temperament was unpredictable, cold-blooded, and cruel. The main reason was that the rumors outside were too frightening, so before they came, they had thought about it for a long time. However, They saw that Father and Mother Chu often went in and out of King Ying's residence and ate there every day. Mother Chu had recently become round and smooth, and Father Chu was also full of vitality. They couldn't help but wonder what benefits King Ying's residence had given them. Old Madame Chu was also wondering if the King of England gave them special treatment because the Chu family was Chu Qingyan's maiden family. Then, could they take the opportunity to get some benefits? Therefore, with this idea, their greed grew bigger and bigger. Today, Madame Xing and Madame Wang insisted on coming to the prince's mansion with Father and Mother Chu. Due to Chu Qingyan's rising status in the prince's mansion and the lord's protection, these servants who came to pick them up were only polite to the Chu family. Seeing that they wanted to come, they didn't stop them. They just needed to arrange an extra carriage. Therefore, Madame Xing and Madame Wang, who had tasted the sweetness, were all smiles and their faces were full of smiles. They thought that they could definitely find out how Chu Qingyan was doing in the King of England's mansion this time. Old Madame Chu had told them that if Chu Qingyan was doing well in the King of England's mansion, they must get some benefits for the Chu family. After all, Chu Qingyan was a member of the Chu family when she was alive and dead. However, if Chu Qingyan was not favored by the King of England in the King of England's mansion and was down and out, they should try their best not to have any relationship with Chu Qingyan. Otherwise, if Chu Qingyan accidentally angered Xiaosu, the Chu family would be in trouble. Thus, when Madame Xing and Madame Wang walked into the room where Chu Qingyan was recuperating, they could not take their eyes off her. Their gazes darted all over the room, causing Chu Qingyan to feel uncomfortable all over. Her expression immediately turned cold. She knew what they were up to. It was their specialty to take advantage of the situation. Chapter 83. This girl has such a sweet mouth. Actually, as long as you are fine, our Chu family will also be fine. Madame Xing covered her mouth with her handkerchief. If others didn't know the relationship between their family, they would think that they were very harmonious. However, Chu Qingyan could tell that she was implying that they were bound together for good or ill. Chu Qingyan and the Chu clan were like grasshoppers tied to the same rope, and neither of them would have a good ending. No, it should be said that if anything happened to her, the first thing the Chu family would do would be to kick her out. Chu Qingyan smiled and ignored her words. She ordered the servants to serve them tea. Madame Chu looked at her daughter awkwardly. She knew that she had brought trouble to her daughter this time. Chu Qingyan gave her mother a reassuring smile, then casually asked about the Chu family's situation. When Madame Wang saw this, she immediately seized the opportunity and began to complain about being poor. Little Qingyan, you don't know this, but recently, there has been an increase in the number of people in the residence, and we have been running low on money. Your third uncle and your brothers have been tightening their belts to survive. Chu Qingyan held her forehead. Was she implying that the Chu family was going to be poor because of her father and mother? But how much rice could my father and mother eat? Chu Qingyan looked at Madame Wang's oily face and remained silent. Yes, it's already summer, but no one in the residence is wearing summer clothes. A few days ago, old Madame almost fell ill from the heat. How sad. Madame Xing cried about being poor for the second time. Her voice and expression were as real as they could be. However, Chu Qingyan continued to remain silent when she saw that she was wearing the latest summer clothes that were trending in the capital. Madame Xing and Madame Wang didn't expect Chu Qingyan to be so calm. They looked at each other and didn't know how to continue the act. After all, no one would watch a one-man show. No matter how thick-skinned they were, they wouldn't be able to carry on. When they were almost done, Chu Qingyan said with difficulty, after hearing the situation from my two aunts, Qingyan felt miserable and wanted to help. She saw her two aunts' eyes light up. She smiled slightly and continued in a sorrowful voice, but I have the heart, but I don't have the strength. Even though Qingyan was in the king's palace, she did not have a prominent status. It was also difficult for her to move around in this place. She was injured again and again, and the amount of medicine she drank was more than the amount of food she ate. I've been living a very In the end, Chu Qingyan sighed and couldn't continue. Madame Xing and Madame Wang looked at Chu Qingyan suspiciously. They couldn't tell whether what she said was true or not, but it was true that she was injured and lying on the bed. Could it be that the King of England was really as cruel as the rumors said? He was even willing to hurt a young child like Chu Qingyan. Instantly, the two of them thought of the same thing and couldn't help but tremble. Seeing that she had achieved her goal, Chu Qingyan said a few more polite words and then asked Xining to lead the two of them to the side hall to leave some space for her and her parents. It's mother's fault that they took the opportunity to make trouble for you. After Madame Xing and Xining left, Chu Qingyan's mother blamed herself. Chu Qingyan smiled and said, "Mother, it's useless even if you stop them. Once they see delicious food, flies will stick to it no matter what. You can't chase them away. So don't worry, I'll take care of everything." Chu Qingyan's mother sighed and reached out to touch her daughter's head. She said with relief and pity, "Children of poor families are able to take care of the family early. Children of poor families grow up early. It's been hard on you." Chu Qingyan leaned on her mother and said coquettishly, "It's not hard, not hard. As long as I'm with father and mother, even if it's hard, daughter will drink it and turn it sweet." Chu Qingyan's mother was amused by her and couldn't help but pat her back and coax her. After talking for a while, Chu Qingyan felt that the room was a little quiet. She opened her eyes and searched for her father for a long time, but she couldn't find him. Chu Qingyan's mother noticed her gaze and knew that she was looking for her father. She couldn't help but laugh. Perhaps he went to look for His Royal Highness again. Speaking of which, it's really strange. Why does your father hit it off so well with His Royal Highness? The moment he came to the prince's estate, he wanted to look for him. Chu Qingyan held her forehead. She also wanted to know where her father's strong self-confidence came from, since he always believed that Xiao Su was the purple-faced man who was saved that day. As expected, Chu Qingyan's father slipped away to look for his son-in-law again. When he returned, Chu Qingyan saw that he had a mysterious expression on his face. When she asked him why he went to look for Xiao Su, he only smiled and didn't say anything. Chu Qingyan felt that as long as her father didn't cause any trouble, she didn't care about anything else. This time, before Chu Qingyan's mother left, she said to her daughter, "In order to prevent them from using the opportunity to enter the estate to threaten you again, mother and your father won't come to visit you often in the future. Your leg injury is almost healed, so just take care of yourself." Knowing that her mother was thinking for her sake, Chu Qingyan was a little touched and a little reluctant to part with her. "Kai Kai, remember to miss father often. Also, remember to make the scallion upside down miss father often." The somewhat sad atmosphere was dispelled just like that by her father's jest. Chu Qingyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she watched them leave the room. Meanwhile, Madame Xing and Madame Wang were sitting restlessly in the side hall. When Chu Qingyan's mother and son were about to leave, they immediately urged them to leave quickly, as if they would die if they stayed any longer. When she saw the expressions on Madame Xing and Madame Wang's faces when they left, Chu Qingyan only chuckled. She would benefit anyone but this turtledove occupying a magpie's nest. As for the person in the study, ever since Chu Qingyan's father left, he fell into deep thought. The book in his hand didn't even turn a single page. It was still on the page when Chu Qingyan's father entered the study. Son-in-law, let me tell you a secret," Chu Qingyan's father said happily the moment he entered the room. Xiao Su was already familiar with his words. Perhaps the colorful cat in the residence had given birth, or the willow branches in front of the door had grown longer, or the stray dog's broken leg had healed. Yes. He didn't find it strange. It's definitely true this time. Because this is the happiest time of the year. Chu Qingyan's father was completely immersed in his own world, but Xiao Su didn't intend to pull him out of it. Chu Qingyan's father, who was immersed in his own world, approached him and whispered something. Xiao Su's hearing was very good. Even though Chu Qingyan's father spoke very softly, he heard it clearly. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his expression was somewhat unreadable. As soon as Chu Qingyan's father finished speaking, he chuckled and winked at him. I wouldn't tell an ordinary person. Son-in-law, perhaps father won't have time to visit you in the near future. You have to take good care of yourself. Don't be like Kai Kai and always kick the quilt. Chu Qingyan's father nagged, looking reluctant to part with him. When Xiaosu finally came back to his senses, there was no one in front of him. He tapped his fingers on the table, thinking about the secret Chu Qingyan's father had told him before he left. In 3 days, it would be Caicai's birthday. Chapter 84. Because Xiaosu had a habit of going to Chu Qingyan's room after coming back from the study, every time it happened to be mealtime, so the kitchen was set up in her room. This time, Huang Yi had people bring the dishes and chopsticks over as usual. And because Chu Qingyan's foot was injured, Huang Yi specially prepared a small table for her on the bed to make it convenient for her to eat. Because Chu Qingyan's leg was injured, Huang Yi's idea was to nourish her body with whatever she ate. Therefore, she would always serve Chu Qingyan braised pork trotters, steamed duck's feet, honey chicken drumsticks, and other animal limbs. Furthermore, she would always use the same ingredients, but she would always cook them in different ways. Her culinary skills were good, and Chu Qingyan would always enjoy her food. However, if she ate too much, there would be a time when she got tired of it. So now Chu Qingyan's eyes drifted to the dishes on the other table. Crispy prawns, spicy chicken, tofu with clams. Once she saw them, Chu Qingyan couldn't move her eyes away. And a certain someone was eating leisurely, not at all noticing her envious gaze. In fact, how could Xiaosu not notice such a bright gaze, but he didn't want to pay attention to it. The more she looked at the dishes, the more Chu Qingyan felt that her food was tasteless. Finally, she couldn't help but open her mouth. Your Highness, my pork trotters are very delicious, do you want to try? She threw a brick to attract Jade. No need. Xiaosu said without turning his head. Oh. Her first move was to exchange something. If he said he wanted to try, she could take the opportunity to say that politeness demands reciprocity and use his crispy prawns to exchange. Unfortunately, it failed. Your Highness, that spicy chicken of yours looks, smells, and looks very delicious. She beat around the bush. It's okay. Xiaosu picked up a piece of spicy chicken, paused, and then indifferently replied. Oh. Chu Qingyan gritted her teeth. At this time, shouldn't he be a gentleman and let her have a taste? The second move failed. Just as Chu Qingyan was racking her brains to think of the third move, Xiaosu's cold words floated over. If you want it, just say it. Chu Qingyan raised her head subconsciously. Wouldn't it be too embarrassing to say it directly? Chinese men and women were particular about being tactful. But the next sentence came again. But this prince will not agree. Xiaosu looked at her coldly before lowering his head to continue eating. Chu Qingyan's eyes, which were originally filled with surprise and anticipation, suddenly turned into resentment. This lord, are you telling a cold joke? What's the point of teasing people like this? Damn it! Cheapskate, drink cold water. Chu Qingyan angrily took a bite of the drumstick and muttered in her heart, you won't even give me a shrimp. Hearing the sound of bones being chewed, Xiaosu's mood was inexplicably good. He even ate half a bowl more than usual. When Huang Yi, who was waiting on the side, saw the way the two interacted, she couldn't help but secretly chuckle. After eating, Xiaosu originally wanted to stay in the room for a while longer. Unfortunately, a certain someone was still holding a grudge over the meal just now and ignored him. Xiaosu inwardly laughed, then left the room, leaving this girl to be awkward on her own. After her lord left, Huang Yi ordered the servants to clean up the table, then walked over to Chu Qingyan with a deep smile on her face. Chu Qingyan looked up and saw Huang Yi's evil smile. She thought about how Huang Yi had clearly seen her embarrassing scene just now, so she couldn't help but purse her lips and say in an aggrieved manner, not only did you not make good food for me, you even laughed at me. I'm ignoring you in the future. Huang Yi burst into laughter, but when she received a certain someone's gaze, she forced herself to stop laughing. Actually, it's not that this servant doesn't want to make those dishes for you, but Lord Ethereal said that you're not suited to eat spicy and seafood food at the moment. Otherwise, this servant wouldn't dare to be so harsh on you. Chu Qingyan finally remembered that when she dodged those knives and swords, her arm had been slightly grazed. She really couldn't eat those, otherwise it would leave a scar. She had an epiphany. No wonder Xiaosu didn't let her eat those things. Although his personality was a bit cold, he wouldn't go so far as to fight over food with a child. After receiving an answer, Chu Qingyan's mood improved for no reason, but she still kept a straight face and took the opportunity to threaten Huang Yi. Once her injuries were fully healed, she would make a table full of delicious food to appease her soul. Huang Yi readily agreed. Even Xining on the side interrupted and took the opportunity to act coquettishly. She also wanted to eat good food. When Chu Qingyan heard the laughter in the room, she couldn't help but think of her previous life in the Chu family. Compared to back then, she was living a more carefree life now. All of this was given to her by Xiaosu. If it weren't for his occasional care, she was afraid that she would have been eaten alive in this bottomless noble family's courtyard. She was no longer as fearful of Xiaosu as before, and he was no longer so distant from her. It seemed that sometimes, she couldn't help but want to get closer to him. Although he was always cold and emotionless. But the strange thing was that she could always feel a trace of warmth from him. She didn't know what the future would be like, but it was fine to grasp the present. Sometimes, some unknown fear came from people's own imagination. She wanted to live a life that wasn't so sad. And the person Chu Qingyan was thinking about was sitting in the study at this time. In the study, 2 long tables were placed separately. On the table was a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. The generals and strategists who were preparing to sleep in their respective manors suddenly received a secret order from the Lord and rushed to the King of England's manor. Everyone thought that something big had happened and rushed over in a hurry. But when they saw the familiar scene in the study, everyone took a step back. The Lord wouldn't ask them to teach some parenting skills again. How to raise a child. How to make a child obediently answer the inexplicable test paper. Huo Ling looked at these generals who had always been calm on the battlefield and couldn't help but laugh. King, Lord, why did you call us here in the middle of the night? A strategist who had always been eloquent stuttered at this time. Xiaosu faintly glanced at them, and everyone immediately lowered their bodies. Do the test paper, he ordered. Everyone couldn't help but look at the test paper on the table. On the birthday gift for the child. Everyone's eyes twitched. Where did the Lord get this question? King, Lord, I suddenly remembered that my mother has something to discuss with me. I'm afraid I can't, Lord, I also have something to do at home. My underage child is waiting for me to go back and coax him to sleep. Everyone started talking at once, and the study was very lively. But after they finished speaking, the person on the seat held his chin with one hand and played with the book pressure stone in his other hand. He looked relaxed, but the faint cold deterrence made everyone present shiver. Everyone was silent. If you can't finish it, then sleep in the study. His tone was faint. I can finish it, I can finish it. The people who were shouting that they had something to do at home rushed to the long table and quickly wrote. Huo Ling shook his head. Shirking in front of the master was simply courting death. Xiaosu played with the stone and thought in his heart. He didn't know what good advice these think tanks could give. He never knew that giving a birthday gift was such a headache. Chapter 85. When the curtain of darkness fell, everyone began to prepare to rest. Chu Qingyan opened her eyes and waited. Ever since she was injured, Xiaosu would often come to see her before she went to sleep. After she fell asleep, he would return to his room. Perhaps he was worried that she would have nightmares again. While Chu Qingyan was waiting quietly, a white figure appeared on top of the walls of the Ying King residence. The figure's charming eyes scanned the interior of the walls, and then, with a light tap of his feet, he shuttled through the interior of the residence like a ghost in the night. His speed was extremely fast, and it was clear that his martial arts skills were very high. He easily passed through the layers of guards, and if one did not look closely, it would seem as though a gust of wind had brushed past one's face. The white figure's goal was very clear. He went straight to the study room. Before he came, he had already obtained the layout of the King of England's palace. But when he stood on a tree branch in front of the study room, he found that the room that should have been completely dark was now brightly lit. Moreover, the figure that was reflected on the window screen was tall and straight. It seemed like he was flipping through something in his hand. The white figure narrowed his phoenix eyes. If he didn't guess wrong, this person should be the King of England, Xiaosu. It seemed like he came at the wrong time, so when he was about to leave, the summer wind blew and blew up a corner of his clothes. It coincidentally entered the yawning Huoling's eyes. "Who is it? Come out!" Huoling coldly shouted. The white figure revealed an evil smile and flew out, flying towards Huoling. Huoling subconsciously blocked, but he never thought that person would turn around and quickly leave in the opposite direction. Huoling was shocked by how soft this person's body was. At this moment, that person had already flown several feet away. He felt like that person was deliberately playing with him. When he came to his senses, he angrily used his qinggong to chase after that person. When Xiaosu heard the commotion in the study room, he quickly came out. He saw that Huoling and the others had already chased after that person, but when he saw the direction they were chasing, his expression suddenly became gloomy. It was the direction of the inner courtyard. Chu Qingyan, who was a little sleepy, half closed her eyes. She was about to fall asleep when she heard some noise outside. It was accompanied by something about catching the assassin. She couldn't help but frown. At this moment, Xining pushed open the door and came in, looking a little flustered. Chu Qingyan asked, "What's going on outside? Why is it so noisy? I heard that an assassin broke into the manor. Lord Huoling is currently searching with the guards." Xining saw that her master was safe and sound, so she let out a sigh of relief. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. The King of England's mansion was so heavily guarded, yet someone was able to break in. Then, how strong was the assassin's martial arts? At this time, Huoling's voice sounded from outside the door. "Ninth young Miss Chu, this subordinate has been ordered to capture the assassin. Is it convenient for you to enter and search?" She knew that Huoling was waiting outside, so she let Xining go out and report. Xining received the order and went out. Not long after, Huoling and several guards followed behind her. Huoling nodded at her and then began to search the room. But after going around in a circle, he told her to rest early and left by himself. Chu Qingyan was no longer sleepy after hearing this noise. She simply hugged the blanket and leaned against the bed. Seeing Xining standing up and yawning, she had her leave. When she was the only one left in the room, she began to ponder. What was someone planning to do by breaking into the king's palace? Was it an assassination? Or was it a theft? Her mind was a little confused. As long as she entered a noble family, this kind of thing would be unavoidable. Only, she never thought that someone would have ideas about the King of England's mansion. Chu Qingyan, who was deep in thought, suddenly smelled a scent that did not belong to the room. It was a faint scent of flowers. His eyes widened abruptly as he raised his head and met a pair of seductive phoenix eyes. When she was about to shout out, that person flicked his finger and a bead flew over. It hit her shoulder and she could not speak at all. When she was stunned on the spot, the person that was stuck to the bed like a gecko fell down. Her white robes fluttered in the wind, drawing a beautiful arc in the air before landing gracefully. A pair of incomparably enchanting eyes were especially bright in the dark night, as if they were flickering with a demonic light. Her fair skin was covered by a white veil, and her peerless face was covered by a veil that could not be seen. Chu Qingyan was a little stunned. In her memory, she had never seen a person with such a beautiful figure before. She guessed that this person should be a rare beauty. While she was in a daze, the other side had already gently landed on the bed and looked at her. It had to be said, that pair of phoenix eyes were slightly raised, unintentionally releasing a charming aura. Chu Qingyan saw that the other side did not make a move to hurt her and only sealed her mute acupuncture point. She could not help but settle down to prevent the other side from getting angry and hurting her. The white-clothed person saw that she was tactful. He first swept his eyes over the room and then his eyes fell on the person in front of him. The young girl who was hugging the quilt and looking at him. Although she still looked a little immature, her beautiful face was revealed. Although there was some fear in her large eyes, she was able to calm herself down. He lightly glanced at her quietly moving body and revealed an evil smile. If you move an inch, I don't mind cutting you an inch. A dagger suddenly appeared in his hand. The candlelight hit the blade and reflected a cold light. He deliberately lowered his voice, making it hard for people to hear. Chu Qingyan suddenly bit her lips. She thought that this person did not pay attention to her, so she wanted to take the opportunity to escape, but she did not think that the other side's eyes would be so sharp. At this time, a group of guards hurriedly passed by the window. The torches were burning and the light shined in. It was reflected in the white-clothed person's eyes and it had a different kind of temptation. Chu Qingyan secretly said in her heart, evildoer. Looking at his figure, he was not old, at most 16 or 17 years old. But to be able to enter the King of England's residence, it could be seen that he was skilled and daring. Chu Qingyan did not dare to provoke him. After all, her life was in his hands. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and could not help but blink at the white-clothed person. The white-clothed person who was thinking about the outside world saw her eyes. The rotating blade on his two fingers paused and turned to point at her. He chuckled in a low voice, "What do you want to say?" This low chuckle, although it was a little strange because he deliberately changed his appearance, it was not difficult to hear the banter in his voice. Chu Qingyan was a little angry, but under the eaves, she had to lower her head. She raised her finger and wrote on the quilt. Even if the white-clothed person knew that she could not do anything in his hands, he was still attracted by her fearless idea. He looked down and was suddenly amused. "What will it take for you to let me go?" she wrote. Chu Qingyan raised her head and saw that the other party was looking at her thoughtfully, a little puzzled. Rumor has it that the 9th young miss of the Chu family is illiterate. Seeing it now, the rumor is not credible. The other party chuckled with a bewitching laugh. Chu Qingyan heard this and was startled. This person knew her. And at this time, a familiar sound of footsteps came from afar. She opened her eyes wide and looked up. Sure enough, she saw that the other party narrowed his eyes and became alert. The sharp blade was already aimed at her throat. Chapter 86. The air instantly froze. 9th Miss Chu is in the room. Lord Huoling has already sent people to search the room. Inside, they could hear the questioning from outside as well as the servant's response. Chu Qingyan recognized that the voice belonged to Xiao Su and her eyes lit up slightly. The man in white could clearly feel the stirring of her emotions. He pressed the dagger closer and lowered his head to her ear. With a faint smile, he threatened, "If he wants to come in later, no matter what method you use, stop him." The faint scent of an unknown flower immediately lingered at the tip of her nose. It was not strong, but light and faint. She raised her head and looked at him blankly. However, the cold blade of the knife was pressed against her aorta on her neck. She instantly sobered up. Under his deterrence, she nodded lightly. The white-clothed man saw that she was obedient and unsealed her mute acupoint. He raised his phoenix eyes, indicating that she shouldn't play any tricks. Chu Qingyan cleared her throat and found that she could speak. She was slightly happy, but after receiving the other's threatening gaze, she restrained her emotions. This king understands. Xiao Su dismissed the servant. He was about to turn and leave, but a string in his heart suddenly tightened. He couldn't help but stop and raise his hand to place it on the door. But he heard a muddled voice coming from inside. Is His Highness outside? Xiaosu lightly responded. I heard that a bad person broke into the Fu. Qing Yan is fine here. You need to be careful and rest early. Qing Yan also needs to sleep. The words were still muddled and unclear, as if the person speaking was about to fall asleep. Xiaosu lowered his brows and lightly responded. The two people inside saw the figure that came through the door slowly turn around and then leave at a leisurely pace. Chu Qingyan bit her lip. She didn't know if the big ice cube heard her words or not. When the white-clothed man saw the person leave, his heart relaxed. He was about to praise this little girl for being tactful when his eyes suddenly narrowed and the dagger in his hand moved. A figure broke through the window and entered the room. A leaf in his hand flew over at a speed faster than the white-robed man. The man in white immediately jumped away, but the leaf made a turn in the air and pierced deeply into the bed wall beside Chu Qingyan. The man in white glanced at the wall of the bed. If he hadn't dodged in time, his wrist would have been crippled. He looked at Xiaosu, who had flown in, and gave a low laugh. He did not expect this person to be so vigilant. Perhaps the little girl had said something that had aroused Xiaosu's suspicion. He had really underestimated Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan could clearly feel that the other party was looking at her with a smile that was not a smile, and her body stiffened. Seeing that she was unharmed, Xiaosu didn't say a word. He raised his hand and attacked the man in white. The man in white raised his phoenix eyes and a cunning light flashed in his eyes. The dagger in his hand flew towards the person on the bed. Xiaosu frowned and the leaf in his hand flew towards the dagger. And in this pause, the man in white escaped through the window that Xiaosu had broken through. Chu Qingyan stared in a daze as the dagger flying towards her was knocked down by the leaf in the air. This scene that only existed on television was actually happening in front of her eyes. Chu Qingyan felt that it was very inconceivable, but what followed was fear. She grabbed the blanket as a thought flashed through her mind. Just a bit more, she would have reported to the underworld. Suddenly, the sound of moderate footsteps slowly approached. She raised her head and saw Xiaosu walking towards her. She thought that he had already gone to chase after the assassin, but she never thought that he would still be here. She stared blankly at him as he leaned over and pulled her into his embrace. His large hands patted her back and his voice had a gentleness that she had never seen before. Don't be afraid, this king is here. Chu Qingyan woke up. So he thought that she had been frightened by the scene just now, so he was comforting her. She admitted that she had been frightened, but the moment she saw him appear, she was no longer afraid. I'm not afraid. Chu Qingyan buzzed in his embrace as she replied. Xiaosu saw that her mood was stable, so he let go of her. He checked her up and down and seeing that she was fine, his expression returned to its usual cold expression. Where's the man in white? Chu Qingyan looked at the crumbling window and turned to ask him. Hualing has already gone to chase after him. But he expected that Hualing would not be able to catch up since that person's cultivation was not below his. Xiaosu fell into deep thought. Chu Qingyan nodded and then asked with a smile, Your Highness, how did you guess that the assassin was in my room? Xiaosu came out of his thoughts and looked at her, You haven't seen this king recently, so you won't rest. Your words just now were different from normal, so this king knew that something was wrong. Chu Qingyan's face turned slightly red. What did he mean by she couldn't sleep without seeing him? But she was still very happy. He could see through her and help her escape from the tiger's den. Your Highness, who is that man in white? Why did he suddenly appear in the king's palace? Chu Qingyan tilted her head and asked in confusion. Be a good girl and go to sleep. You shouldn't care about all of this. Xiaosu stood up and pulled the brocade quilt up to cover her exposed arms as he softly instructed her. Chu Qingyan obediently shrunk back into the blanket. Since he said this, he should have a plan. She could just eat, heal, and sleep as an obedient worm. Seeing her close her eyes and take deep breaths, Xiaosu finally slowly walked out of the room. At this time, Huoling and the others were already waiting outside the door. Lord, this subordinate was incompetent and let him escape. Huoling's head was very low and he was a bit annoyed. His skills are above yours, so you don't need to blame yourself. Send an order to Water Spirit to pay close attention to the movements of outsiders in the capital. Increase the manpower and strengthen the defenses of the king's palace. Xiaosu coldly said. This subordinate obeys. Huoling immediately left with his people. Xiaosu looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. The dark night sky was dotted with stars, but they seemed to fall into a bottomless abyss, unable to illuminate that deep pool. He could have caught that person just now, but he chose to save her first in an instant. He looked down at his hands with an unreadable expression. Once he had misgivings, it was hard to make a move. After Xiaosu left, the person who should have been sleeping opened her eyes. She reached out her hand and opened her fingers. A token in her hand was releasing a green light. Inside the jade circle, there was a moon character carved into it. She slightly closed her hand. This was something that the white-clothed person had accidentally dropped. She originally wanted to give it to Xiaosu, but she did not take it out in the end. In this world, there was no hatred for no reason, and there was no love for no reason. Towards Xiaosu, she still could not completely trust him, so why did he have such a pampering attitude towards her? Once she figured out what kind of attitude Xiaosu had towards her, she would give it to him. That pair of charming phoenix eyes appeared in her mind. Chu Qingyan's fingers unconsciously tightened. She hoped that she would not meet him again in the future because this person gave her a dangerous feeling. The white-clothed person broke away from his pursuers and landed on the eaves of a building. There were already two black-clothed people respectfully waiting for him. Young palace master. The two of them bowed. The white-clothed person took off his white veil and revealed his peerless face. His lips hooked into an evil smile. Xiaosu is more vigilant than I expected. In the future, without my orders, do not act on your own in the capital. This subordinate obeys. The two of them replied. Chapter 87. Chu Qingyan didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she felt that Xiaosu's mood was a little off these days, as if he was troubled by something. She couldn't explain how she felt it, but if asked in detail, she could only say that it was her woman's sixth sense. It had to be said that Chu Qingyan's sixth sense was quite accurate. Xiaosu was indeed troubled by something. And this matter was related to Chu Qingyan. In the study, Xiaosu flipped through the papers that his subordinates had handed in that day, but none of them satisfied him. He immediately put down the thick stack of papers and leaned back in his chair with a headache. Actually, he didn't need to treat Chu Qingyan's birthday so seriously. He could have ordered Hong Yi to organize a birthday banquet. But he didn't want to do that. It seemed that it was because Father Chu said that the most important birthday in a girl's life was when she was 10 years old, so he didn't want to treat it half-heartedly. Since he raised her like a child, he wanted to give her the best things in the world. He never mistreated his own people. However, as the days drew closer and closer, he still had no clue. He had been able to think of a way to break through the enemy's strange marching formations, but now, he had been defeated by a small birthday. He could not help but feel helpless. He got up and left the study. Just as he was about to walk to his room, he passed by Chu Qingyan's room and heard her talking to Xining. At this moment, Xining asked in confusion, "Why does that girl hate that guy?" Chu Qingyan leaned against the bed wall and smiled. "Because the girl likes bananas, but the guy gave her a cart of apples." Then the guy said that he was touched by his actions and asked the girl why she wasn't touched. The girl was speechless. Then the guy told the whole world that he spent all his money to buy her a cart of apples, but she wasn't touched at all. The girl must be a cold-hearted person. There must be something wrong with the girl's character. But the girl clearly only likes bananas. It means that you can't follow blindly, you can't just think whatever you want, you have to consider the other person's feelings. Chu Qingyan paused for a moment before continuing, it's that simple. She felt that children in ancient times matured early. In modern times, they were still in junior high school, while they were already married and had children. Therefore, she wanted to instill some modern ideas in Xining when she had nothing to do. However, after Xining heard this, she asked in confusion, that boy gave her an apple because he thought he had given the best to the girl. However, what the girl wanted was a banana. If the girl didn't say it out loud, who would know what she wanted? Master, don't you think so? Chu Qingyan was stunned by her words. Indeed, Xining's idea was not wrong. She couldn't help but pat Xining's head with a smile. You are indeed my student. You can draw inferences from one case. It is true that a famous teacher produces a brilliant student. Although her master was a little thick-skinned, Xining still felt that her master had praised her. She was very happy and her tail was about to stick up. However, no one saw a certain someone standing by the window with a thoughtful look in his eyes. On this day, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan were eating in the room. Chu Qingyan felt that the atmosphere was a little dull. Biting her chopsticks, she thought about how to liven up the atmosphere. However, she didn't expect the person opposite her to speak first. Your father said that tomorrow is your birthday. How do you want to celebrate it? His tone was light, as if he had mentioned it inadvertently. Chu Qingyan's chopsticks paused and she looked at the person in front of her in surprise. Daddy actually told Xiao Su about this. Tomorrow was her birthday. Xiao Su actually asked her what she wanted to do. Chu Qingyan snapped out of her shock and saw that the person opposite her was waiting for her reply. She couldn't help but rub her nose. In the past, when she was at home, she celebrated every birthday by herself. Her father was either on a mission or her mother was on a business trip. They almost never saw each other on her birthday. Other than calling to wish her well and giving her money to invite her good friends to celebrate with her, they didn't do anything else. She was also used to buying a cake and going to karaoke with her best friends for a little liveliness. This was the first time that someone had seriously asked her how she wanted to celebrate her birthday. She really didn't know anything. That was all she could answer. You can't be casual. Xiao Su frowned when he heard that. The 10th birthday is considered a big event. You have to treat it seriously. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised that Xiao Su would place such importance on her birthday. Then, she really was too casual when she said that she would be casual. She thought about it and then said, why don't Huang Yi make a table of delicious food to celebrate? Xiao Su felt that this was the only thing that her little brain could think of. He pondered for a moment before saying, that's a good idea. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. Discussing such things with the big ice block was really stressful. Xiao Su tapped his fingers on the table and continued to say coldly, then what do you want? Was Xiao Su asking her what she wanted as a birthday present? Was he going to give it to her? Chu Qingyan was stunned. She had thought that it was already beyond her expectations that he wanted to hold a birthday party for her. Little did she know that the real deal was waiting for her. She suddenly came back to her senses. Propping her chin with one hand, she tilted her head to look at him and asked tentatively, is anything okay? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. It's within reason. Chu Qingyan smiled when she heard that. It's definitely within reason. Then what do you want the most? Xiao Su didn't comment as he waited for her answer. Chu Qingyan wanted a lot of things, but humans weren't easily satisfied, so what she wanted wasn't material things. Her gaze landed on the mask that he wore every day and she smiled slyly. I want to take off your mask. She suspected that his face might not be disfigured because in novels, people usually wore masks to hide their appearance and not to be ugly. Except for this. Xiao Su didn't expect that to be what she wanted and immediately rejected it. Chu Qingyan sighed. This person was really annoying. He even said that everything had to be within reason. Her request was quite reasonable. Alright, she changed it. I want to cure Daddy's illness. She had always been worried about her father's illness. She knew that Ethereal's medical skills were very good. As long as Xiao Su gave an order, no matter how much Ethereal hated her, he would obey the order to treat her father. It's about yourself, Xiao Su said impatiently. If this wasn't okay, that wasn't okay, then what was within reason? Then I want the stars in the sky. Chu Qingyan made an even more unreasonable request in a fit of anger. That's fine. Xiao Su agreed without hesitation. This time, Chu Qingyan was dumbfounded. She stared blankly at the person in front of her. Did he hear what she wanted? Chapter 88. While Chu Qingyan was still in shock, Xiao Su had already stood up and left. Chu Qingyan bit her chopsticks and looked at Xining, who was also stunned. She asked, "Did the Lord agree just now?" Xining nodded blankly. "Master, you didn't hear wrong. The Lord wants to pluck the stars from the sky for you." Chu Qingyan covered her eyes with her hands. Heavens, she must have opened it in the wrong way. Otherwise, how could she have encountered such a scene? But when her birthday really came, there was a sumptuous feast in front of her. She had seen or not. When Huang Yi put down the last dish, she sincerely said to her, "Ninth young mistress, happy 10 years old." "Thank you." She was touched. After a while, her parents were also brought over by the guards of the prince's residence. The family had a reunion dinner. This was the first birthday she really celebrated with her parents since she could remember. The memories of the original body did not belong to her. Mother Chu gave her a peace lock and personally hung it around her neck. Then, she patted her shoulder and said with a choked voice, "I didn't expect you to be 10 years old so soon. Time flies. You've grown up. Mother is happy for you." Chu Qingyan leaned over and hugged her mother. Her voice was a little hoarse. "Mother, today is also your day of suffering. If you hadn't worked so hard to give birth to me, I wouldn't have appeared in this world. Mother is the greatest person in the world. I love you." In ancient times, due to the lack of hygiene, doctors did not know how to deliver babies correctly. Therefore, to the people of ancient times, childbirth was like the gate of hell. Many people had difficulties in giving birth and died because of it. Therefore, she had incomparable admiration and love for her mother. This was also the first time she had bravely expressed her love for her mother. In the modern world, Chinese people had always been shy to express their love for their parents. She followed this tradition until she transmigrated to ancient times. She regretted that she had never told her parents that she loved them. Until now, she took this opportunity to tell her parents the words she had hidden for a long time. Good, good, good. What a good child. Chu Machen's mother was embarrassed by her daughter's sudden confession. She wiped her tears and felt a little embarrassed. When Mr. Chu saw this, he ran over and hugged the mother and daughter. He smiled and said, "I love you too." The three of them suddenly burst into laughter. Before he left, Chu Machen's father took out a stone from his pocket and stuffed it into his daughter's hand. He said that this was an immortal stone given to him by an immortal in a dream, so he was giving it to her. Amused, Chu Qingyan accepted it and watched her parents leave. When everything returned to normal, Chu Qingyan felt a little regretful. She didn't know what Xiao Su was busy with today. He hadn't appeared all day. She wanted to thank him properly and bring her parents over to celebrate her birthday with her. Unfortunately, she couldn't find him. She asked Hong Yi and the others, but they didn't know either. When night fell, Chu Qingyan was a little discouraged. It seemed that Xiao Su wouldn't appear today. She couldn't help but feel frustrated. He clearly said that he would accompany her. Why didn't he keep his word? What a big scammer. Just as she was cursing a certain someone in her heart, a certain someone appeared. Chu Qingyan widened her eyes at the person in front of her. She suddenly pursed her lips. "Why did you only come back now? I didn't even leave any food for you." Actually, what she wanted to ask was why he didn't attend her birthday banquet. Chu Qingyan didn't notice that he was covered in dust and turned her head to look a little willful. Xiao Su broke into laughter. Unfortunately, his smile was hidden under his mask, so no one noticed. He approached her and looked down at her from above. "I'll take you somewhere. Do you want to come?" Chu Qingyan was stunned, but she immediately reacted. "Yes." Xiao Su broke into laughter again, but this time, Chu Qingyan was a little stunned when she saw the hint of amusement in his inky eyes. However, she heard him shake his head and say, "You're going with this prince without even asking where we're going. Aren't you worried that I'll trick you and sell you?" As he said this, he bent down to pick her up. Chu Qingyan automatically reached out to hug his neck and naturally replied, "If you want to sell me, you don't need to trick me at all. You can just pack me up and take me away." Xiao Su praised, "You have self-awareness." "That's right." She generously accepted this praise. "Hold on tight." As soon as Xiao Su walked out of the door, he lowered his head and said to her. Immediately after, he flew up and tapped the roof with the tip of his foot, landing on the wall of the mansion. He then jumped up again, like an eagle spreading its wings in the night. She never thought that he would directly use his qinggong to carry her. The wind was very strong, lifting up her long hair and covering her eyes. She looked through the gaps and saw the black-clothed people closely following behind them. She only recognized one of them, which was Huoling. The other faces were all unfamiliar. She guessed that these people were his hidden guards. She placed her attention on him again and looked up to see the chin under the mask. That delicate skin, that perfect curve. It was hard to imagine that the face under the mask was ugly. Xiao Su lightly jumped up and down on the rooftops of the capital. Chu Qingyan experienced this rare feeling of flying. She reached out to grab her long hair that was flying in the air and giggled as she looked up to ask him, "Are these the stars you want to give me?" It was indeed very close. Every time she flew up and looked up, she could see the sky full of stars. This was the closest place she could think of to the stars. "We're not there yet." Xiao Su continued forward, but from her cheerful tone, he could feel her mood. Xiao Su was also affected for no reason. His brows relaxed and his voice became less harsh. So there was still something good waiting for her. Chu Qingyan's heart jumped with joy as she waited in his embrace for the pleasant surprise to arrive. After a few jumps, they arrived at the foot of a mountain. Chu Qingyan thought this was the place, but Xiao Su did not stop moving forward. He lifted her up and easily headed towards the top of the mountain. Just now, the height of the roof was not too difficult for her, but now that she lowered her head, the entire town and village was beneath her feet. Her little heart trembled slightly, but more than that, she was curious. She felt that this trip would become the most beautiful scenery in her life. She listened to the sound of the wind brushing past her ears and felt the coolest greeting in the mountains. She squinted her eyes and opened them. The person on top of her head had black hair flying behind his back. With the night sky as the background, the silver mask shone under the moonlight. But this time, the mask he wore only covered the bridge of his nose. She could see his thin lips, which were pursed with a trace of coldness. But under the sparkling luster of the starlight, in the dark night, it rippled with a touch of enchanting sexiness. Chu Qingyan was stunned by the thought that flashed through her mind. Wasn't the big ice cube always as cold as winter iron? Could the words enchanting sexiness be associated with him? Why did she have such a strange thought? "We're here." His thin lips lightly opened, pulling her back to reality. She followed his gaze and instantly widened her eyes. Chapter 89. At first glance, there was a towering building at the top of the mountain. At second glance, she looked up. 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors. She couldn't count anymore. When did such a building exist in the capital? If there was, she should have heard of it. She got down from Xiao Su's arms. Her foot injury was much better now, so she limped a few steps before looking up. At third glance, the building was actually built with wooden planks. The wooden pillars were interlocked with each other, and there were all kinds of lifelike carvings on them. There were immortals riding the clouds, lifelike candied hawthorn skewers, carps swimming in the water. Everything was carved according to a child's preference. Seeing this, no matter how stupid she was, she could guess that this building was completed recently. The wooden planks were still new, and even the ground was moist from being plowed. She was shocked by this uncanny workmanship, and was also shocked that there was such a capable person in this world who could build such an ingenious pavilion in such a short period of time. Big Ice Cube, this must have taken a lot of effort, right? She stood in front of the building, unable to find words to describe her shock. Xiaosu didn't answer, but at this time, someone replied, "It didn't take too long, just 6 hours." 6 hours? This simply broke Chu Qingyan's understanding. Wait, this voice? She looked in the direction of the voice and saw an 18 or 19-year-old man wearing a black silk headscarf. He smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. Subordinate Mu Ling greets 9th Miss Chu. You are? Chu Qingyan looked at Xiaosu, then looked at the man who called himself Mu Ling. Only then did she notice that there were more than 10 men in gray waiting quietly near the building. This subordinate is the commander in charge of craftsmen, carpenters, and blacksmiths in the Shao Lai cavalry. These people are this subordinate's skilled craftsmen. This time, the stargazing tower was built by them. Mu Ling saw her confusion and couldn't help but explain. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Wow, she admired craftsmen the most. In the modern world, a high degree couldn't determine whether a person could live a tall, rich, and handsome life, but with a craft in hand, there was no problem in running rampant in society. In addition, the building's construction skills were superb. Chu Qingyan was simply in awe. Fast, accurate, beautiful. That's amazing. You guys are too amazing, I'll give you 32 likes. Chu Qingyan blurted out. Xiaosu originally thought that Chu Qingyan would be grateful to him, but he didn't expect her to drool over his subordinates. His face darkened, he reached out his hand, grabbed her collar, and walked to the building. This grab caught Chu Qingyan off guard. She flailed her arms and legs, feeling as if she couldn't breathe. How could this person change his face so quickly? He didn't know how to be gentle with women at all. Seeing this, Xiaosu threw her back. Her entire body landed on his broad back. He said, "Hold on tight," and jumped through the door. After finding the stairs, he quickly jumped through the stairs, going up one floor at a time. Chu Qingyan's head hit his back and she suddenly felt dizzy. He was clearly thin, but just now, she clearly felt that she had hit hard muscles. She couldn't help but hug his neck with one hand and rub the small bump on her forehead with the other. He really didn't know how to be gentle. At this time, when she was cursing in her heart, she saw the structure of the building from the corner of her eyes. She originally thought that the building was built in such a short time, so the inside would be very simple and crude. She didn't expect that every corner of the building would be exquisite. The wooden tables, chairs, teapots, teacups, vases, and even the flowers in the vases were carved out of wood. They were so lifelike. She once again admired the exquisite craftsmanship of the ancient people. Xiaosu carried her all the way up. She thought that if her leg wasn't injured, she wouldn't know how long it would take for her to climb up step by step. Now that there was a free elevator, this injury really came at the right time. Xiaosu's speed became faster and faster. Chu Qingyan could no longer see the scenery around her. The wind blew and hurt her eyes. She couldn't help but close them. When the wind stopped, she slowly opened her eyes and was immediately stunned. She couldn't care less about her hairstyle that had been washed, cut, and dried. She stared blankly at the starry sky above her head. She seemed to have arrived at a sea of stars. She could touch those twinkling stars with just a stretch of her hand. The wind blew past, and her fingertips were slightly cold. She lowered her head and looked down. What she saw was Xiaosu's slightly raised side profile. Under the silver mask, his exquisite side profile was faintly revealed. She was a little confused. This is... Xiaosu put her down and placed her on a wooden chair on the top floor. He stood with his hands behind his back. Zhai Xinglu, Chu Qingyan heard him and looked around. This was an open roof. Other than the railings, there was no roof. Looking down, the people at the bottom of the building were already the size of a fist. She suddenly remembered a poem she learned when she was young. The dangerous building was 100 feet high, and one could pluck the stars with one's hand. He didn't dare to speak loudly for fear of alarming the people above. He was probably the only one who dared to build a tall building on top of a mountain. She was touched by his concern for her. She raised her eyes and looked up at the sky full of stars. She then looked at the person beside her. He was dressed in brocade, as if he wanted to blend into the night. However, the aura he exuded could not be ignored. She couldn't help but think of the domineering CEOs described in modern romance novels. Then, he pointed at the world and said to her, "You've taken over the entire galaxy." Ha! Chu Qingyan gave herself a thumbs up for her imagination. However, she quickly stopped laughing. Otherwise, Xiaosu would think that she was crazy with joy. She mischievously stretched out her hand, as if she could really pluck those stars. At this moment, a grape-sized bead was stuffed into her hand. Chu Qingyan looked at the person beside her suspiciously. She saw his back facing the light as he lowered his head to look at her. He muttered, "The stars you wanted." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked at her hand. Because she was holding it, there was a faint light inside. She couldn't help but be curious. She immediately opened her hand. Suddenly, there was a bright light, as if a white lotus had suddenly bloomed. A halo of light bloomed, blurring her eyes. She waited until her eyes had adjusted to the light before she saw that it was a round white jade bead. It felt comfortable to the touch and was slightly warm in the palm of her hand. It was as if the source of heat would flow into her blood and meridians through the palm of her hand. Could it be that this was the legendary top-grade unpolished jade that was said to be warm in the winter and cool in the summer? What is this? She pulled the sleeve of the person beside her and asked curiously. The starlight passed through the gap between her fingers and shone into her eyes. They were sparkling brightly, brighter than the stars. Xiaosu curled his lips, ripples appearing at the corner of his mouth. A protective bead carved from a fluorite cloud. It can be used to avoid poison, calm the heart, and nourish the body. Xiaosu explained. Fluorite cloud? She had never heard of it. However, she felt that the name was quite grand. Perhaps she was just ignorant. Is it for me? Chu Qingyan looked at him eagerly. Xiaosu curled his lips. What do you think? He rarely spoke to her so gently. Chu Qingyan forgot herself and hugged his arm. She said happily, "Big ice block, you're so nice." Xiaosu lowered his head and stroked her head. "Qingyan, happy 10th birthday." Chapter 90. When they came down from Zhai Xinglu, she was still carried down on Xiaosu's back. Mu Ling was very familiar with the name Chu Qingyan, but when he saw with his own eyes that his master did not resist her and even intimately carried her on his back like a child, he really believed that his master treated this little girl differently from other people. His eyes swept over the fluorite cloud that Chu Qingyan was casually playing with in her hand and he was stunned. At this time, he heard her tilt her head and say to his master, "Protective bead doesn't sound very good. Can I change its name?" "Up to you." "Then it's decided on you, Xingchen." Chu Qingyan giggled. Xiaosu did not comment. Then Mu Ling watched as Chu Qingyan tossed his master up and down. "Little grandaunt, you're tossing an entire city in your hands to play with." Then he saw her casually stuff the bead into her sleeve. Mu Ling's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. He used his eyes to ask his master, "Did you not tell this little grandaunt that there are only 3 pieces of this fluorite cloud in the world and one of them is the one in her hand?" Xiao Su indifferently glanced at him. So what if he told her? So what if he didn't tell her? Mu Ling really wanted to gouge out his own eyes. If he had known, he would not have helped his master grind the fluorite cloud into a bead and let this little grandaunt play with it like a marble. Chu Qingyan felt Mu Ling's gaze on her and raised her brows. She looked over at him, but unexpectedly, he had already turned away. She originally wanted to establish a good relationship with him so that she could secretly learn from him in the future. Their craftsmanship was really too good. If she left the Wang Fu in the future and had nowhere to go, she could still make a living from this craftsmanship. At this time, Chu Qingyan heard Xiao Su's cold order, tear it down. Yes. Mu Ling accepted the order and waved to the people behind her. Immediately, everyone swarmed up and flew upstairs. They quickly began to dismantle the building. Chu Qingyan was dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, 3 floors had been demolished. She came to a realization. The sudden appearance of such a tall building on top of this mountain, with its speed and exquisite design, could very well arouse the suspicion of others. That was why it was demolished immediately after it was built, so that no one with ulterior motives would be able to get hold of it. Moreover, Xiao Su's identity was known. If the Sichuan emperor heard about this, there would be some criticism. She looked at Zhai Xinglu, which had suddenly become much shorter, and felt a little emotional. This was the first time he was so close to the vast starry sky. This was the first time someone had really built a stargazing tower because of his nonsense. She couldn't help but think of an illusion. It was about how King Yu of Zhou did such a ridiculous thing in order to win Bao Xi's smile. And the big ice cube actually spent so much manpower and material resources for her birthday. Was it the same as King Yu of Zhou? Because of the time they spent together, she was no longer so careful around Xiao Su, or rather, she was no longer so careless with her words. When she came back to her senses, she had already blurted out the words without thinking. At this time, she saw Mu Ling stagger and look up at her in horror. It was obvious that Mu Ling was frightened by her words. She immediately regretted that she had been too bold. She didn't know if Xiao Su was angry at her analogy. But Xiao Su's emotions didn't fluctuate much. He said lightly, 6 hours. Using local materials, it doesn't take much material resources. And these 12 people have been too idle recently, so this king pulled them out to practice. Chu Qingyan choked. Cough, cough. She looked around at the empty mountain peak. She could still see that this place used to be a dense forest. She felt like her knee had been struck by an arrow. Indeed, it didn't take much manpower and material resources. Mu Ling, who was currently directing people to dismantle, also felt like his knee had been struck by an arrow. Although it didn't take much energy to dismantle several dozen stories of tall buildings, their master had requested for quality and quantity. It had to be completed within 6 hours. They really wanted to hug each other and cry. Huo Ling walked over and patted his shoulder. They were in the same boat, so he said, if you met her father, you would feel that your life right now would be perfect. Mu Ling had also heard about the Chu family's foolish father that could make Turin so angry. Thinking about how powerful he was, he couldn't help but look at Huo Ling with sympathy. It was a pity that Mu Ling never expected that if he sympathized with someone today, he would have to sympathize with himself in the future. Chu Qingyan looked around aimlessly. Her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Where was Star Plucking Tower? Where did it go? Looking around, there was only an empty piece of land. Then she saw a pile of wood on the side. And Huo Ling, Turin, was currently directing people to bundle the wood into small piles and then carry them on their backs. What are they doing? Are they destroying the corpses? Chu Qingyan pointed at Huo Ling and the others as she asked the people below her. Recycling trash. Xiao Su turned and flew down the mountain after saying this, hold on tight. Chu Qingyan obediently hugged his neck. Then she turned around to look at Huo Ling and the others carrying piles of wood that were taller than them as they followed behind. She thought that if someone woke up in the middle of the night and saw these giant things, they would be scared out of their wits. The next day, there really were people who were scared out of their wits. Huang Yi looked at the yard and the piles of wood in the kitchen and her eyes almost fell out. She had people send some wood over yesterday, but she didn't need this much. Heavens, how long would it take to burn all this firewood? Sitting on the bed, listening to Xining report Huang Yi's exploding expression, Chu Qingyan burst out in laughter. This big ice cube really was a thrifty youth. The peaceful days passed like water. What didn't change was that her parents would occasionally come to see her. Her father would still cause a ruckus in the king's palace. Those servants were angry at him, but they couldn't do anything because he had the king's little princess backing him up. Xiao Ran would also come to see her from time to time, but he had been busy with his studies recently, so the number of times he came to the king's palace had decreased. Speaking of which, it had been several days since she last saw him, so she did miss him a bit. What changed was that the weather became hotter and hotter. There was also her foot injury. After 2 months of rest, it was almost healed. On this day, she was eating with Xiao Su, but she was a bit distracted. Xiao Su looked at her, "Don't multitask while eating." Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue. She felt that this big ice cube had more and more potential to be a father. She ate 2 mouthfuls of rice and her eyes turned. She probed, "Your Highness, my foot injury is almost healed. Can I go out to play?" Xiao Su glanced at her. Chu Qingyan could see the disbelief in his eyes and immediately stood up. She spun a few times for him to see. "Look, can't I run and jump now? Just let me go out for a walk. I've been in the Fu for the past 2 months and grass is about to grow." Xiao Su's gaze moved up and landed on the top of her head. "Wait until the flowers bloom." Chu Qingyan choked, "I'm just using a metaphor. Just let me go out to play." "It's fine if you don't let me go out, but you'll play with me?" Xiao Su raised an eyebrow. It looked like after a few months of rest, her temper had grown. She actually dared to threaten him. But after reading the parenting manual, he also knew that it was normal for children to want to play. She had been cooped up in the Fu for a period of time, so it was time to let her go out for a walk. Otherwise, she would quickly enter the rebellious stage. The parenting manual concluded that children in the rebellious stage were the most troublesome for their parents. Bring along the Fu's guards. Chu Qingyan felt like she was on a roller coaster and immediately jumped up. "I knew that big ice cube is the best." Big ice cube. He seemed to have gotten used to this title after hearing it so often. Chapter 91. After the meal, Chu Qingyan immediately went to change her clothes. When she finished tidying up and walked out of the room with Xining, there was already someone waiting for her at the door with his arms crossed. It was actually Turan, the Turan who hated her the most. She was obviously stunned and asked hesitantly, "Did His Highness send you to protect me?" Turan looked at her coldly. "That's right." Chu Qingyan's excited heart suddenly felt like it was splashed with a bucket of cold water. She and Xining looked at each other and felt that they were probably going to freeze to death. Turan's hostility made them shiver all over. Chu Qingyan wanted to cry but had no tears. Could she ask for someone else? "Ninth Miss Chu, you're not leaving." Turan was a little impatient. Chu Qingyan immediately responded, "Let's go." Thus, Chu Qingyan, her servant, and Turan's 2 plainclothes bodyguards made a total of 5 people. Although the person beside her always emitted an aura of hostility, Chu Qingyan was not a person who wanted everyone to be good to her. She knew that Turan looked down on her, but she was not a banknote. How could everyone like her? Moreover, she did not like people who were cold to her, so she just minded her own business. On the road, there were many women of her age who came out to play. Although women did not go out of the house in ancient times, in the dynasty she lived in, the restrictions on women were not so strict. However, once a woman reached the age of marriage, she would consciously reduce the number of times she went out. This was because they were busy sewing wedding clothes and learning how to take care of the house. they simply did not have the leisure time to go out. However, Chu Qingyan could still see many beautifully dressed women walking around outside, buying things. Green robes with wide sleeves and red hairpins flashing in the wind. There was no conflict of interest between people. There was laughter, and there would not be neighbors who did not interact with each other. This was a simple and honest dynasty. There was no rolling oil and smoke, no choking secondhand smoke, and no chemical pollution. This was a beautiful and pollution-free dynasty. Chu Qingyan sighed with emotion. Turan, who hadn't been paying attention to Chu Qingyan, heard her sighs. He couldn't help but feel that this woman was a little strange. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. Chu Qingyan had already prepared to treat these guards as heir. She walked slowly on the busy street with Xining. They looked here and there, but they didn't buy anything. Everything was just for the novelty. Although Turan was impatient, he couldn't say anything because of his master's order. He could only follow step by step while maintaining a certain distance. Chu Qingyan walked in front of a vendor and saw a pearl hair clip that was quite pleasing to the eye. She couldn't help but stop her footsteps. She was about to pick it up and play with it when she heard a burst of noise not far away. She couldn't help but look towards the source of the noise. He saw several men dressed as servants surrounding something, and the leader of the group, a man wearing a peacock-patterned robe, was scolding something. She took a closer look and vaguely saw a petite woman lying on the ground. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. The vendor also saw this scene and said, "It's a sin." Thinking that the vendor knew something, Chu Qingyan immediately asked, "Boss, do you know what's going on in front?" The stall owner originally didn't want to meddle, but seeing that she was still young, his love for the young was aroused, so he said to her, "Do you see that man in the lead? That's the younger brother of imperial concubine Yu, whom His Majesty dotes on the most. Usually, he bullies men and women in the capital." Chu Qingyan heard this and thought that it was the kind of thing that was often seen in TV dramas. She just never thought that she would encounter it. She wanted to go up and see who was being bullied. She had just taken a few steps when she was blocked in front of her. She looked up and saw that it was Turan. At this moment, his face was full of impatience and he looked at her disapprovingly. "Ninth young Miss Chu, you should go back. Don't meddle in this kind of thing." Chu Qingyan knew that she shouldn't meddle in this matter, but when he said that, she suddenly became angry. "As a guard of the prince's residence, shouldn't you step forward and stop this kind of thing? You represent the King of England." Turan poured cold water on her. "But this subordinate shouldn't cause trouble for the Lord. This kind of thing should be handled by the Yaman's people. As the Lord's subordinates, we should know that we shouldn't overstep our duty." Chu Qingyan wanted to refute again, but at this moment, the noise suddenly approached. She and Turan looked over. The woman who was surrounded suddenly broke through the encirclement and ran towards Chu Qingyan and the others. However, she tripped and fell at Chu Qingyan's feet. Those men instantly surrounded her. That woman was in utter despair. She raised her head abruptly and met Chu Qingyan's bright eyes. Instantly, she felt a strong desire to live. "Young mistress, please save me. I told you to run, I told you to run." The man in the peacock-embroidered robe smiled cruelly. He took the stick from the servant and was about to hit that woman. In a flash, Chu Qingyan didn't have time to think and raised her hand to stop him. "Stop!" She looked at those men with a determined gaze. In modern times, people were taught from a young age to be willing to help others and help the weak. If everyone was selfish and only knew how to protect themselves and let those who did evil get away with it, it would simply fuel their anger and courage. That man stopped when he heard that and looked angrily at the person who suddenly appeared in front of him. "Who are you? You dare to meddle in my business?" Chu Qingyan was still young. Although her clothes were of good quality and there were guards by her side, Fu Anlai, who had always been domineering, didn't put her in his eyes at all. Chu Qingyan coldly snorted. "Bullying the common people and committing violence on the street. No matter who it is, they can come and say a few words of justice." Fu Onlai laughed heartily when he heard this. He smiled at the servants beside him and said, "Another little girl who hasn't seen the world. Tell her, where is the person who meddled in my business now? Sleeping in the mass grave." Ha! The servant looked at Chu Qingyan with an expression that said she was overestimating herself. Chu Qingyan didn't care about this group of motley crew. She first had Xining and herself help the woman up. As soon as she touched the woman, she saw that she was beaten up in many places. It could be said that her skin was torn and her flesh was exposed. Chu Qingyan was abnormally angry. It wasn't that she was a saint, but sometimes, when something happened, even if she didn't have the ability, she still wanted to stand up. Evil, someone had to be restrained. At this time, when he saw that Chu Qingyan, this little girl, didn't take him seriously, he immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. He angrily said to Chu Qingyan and the others, "Come, beat her for me. Turan, if I didn't forget, His Highness sent you to protect me?" Chu Qingyan looked at these approaching people and suddenly turned her head to the people who were watching the show with folded arms and leisurely smiled. She didn't have any awareness of the impending disaster. Turan was stunned. He immediately knew that Chu Qingyan had grasped his weakness. He didn't have to save that woman, but with his master's orders, he couldn't ignore Chu Qingyan. But the other party was Consort Yu's younger brother. He frowned. Just as he was hesitating, the people were already approaching. And then, the sound of the wooden fish sounded, and the fragrance of the Buddhist lotus grew clearer. Chu Qingyan turned her head and saw a handsome monk standing at the corner of the street. There was a smile at the corner of his mouth and he was chanting in a low voice. "Amitba, benefactor, please stop." Chapter 92. It's Master Su Jian, Master, greetings, Master. Master's grace. The moment the monk appeared, the commoners who had gathered around to watch the commotion all knelt down to pay their respects. Instantly, the atmosphere around Chu Qingyan became much better. Almost everyone was kneeling down to pay their respects, except for one person who was standing in the crowd. "Girl, kneel down, Master's Buddhist light cannot be blasphemed." Some people tried to persuade her, but Chu Qingyan did not do so. In her mind, she should kneel to the heavens, the earth, and her parents. Although there was a clear hierarchy in this dynasty and there were times when she had to kneel, she could not just kneel to one person. She bowed slightly and cupped her hands at the person who came. "Master Su Jian. Benefactor Chu, how have you been?" Su Jian did not care about these empty formalities. To him, it did not matter whether they kowtowed or not. He was just used to people kowtowing to him everywhere he went. He knew it was useless to stop them, so he did not waste his breath. "Master, how have you been?" Chu Qingyan smiled and replied. Su Jian walked forward slowly, his monk robes fluttering in the absence of wind as if he was riding the wind. People automatically made way for him. He smiled at the people. When the people stood up, Su Jian turned to Fu Onlai, who was about to attack again. "Benefactor Fu, please show mercy." Fu Onlai raised his thick brows. "Master, you're not cultivating in Buddhism, but you're here to meddle in the secular world?" "Buddha, the great hermit lives in the city, the world is his home. He cultivates in the secular world and becomes a Buddha in the secular world. Therefore, this poor monk does not meddle in the secular world, but meditates in seclusion." Su Jian put his palms together and smiled. "Then it's not against the law for me to capture an escaped servant, right?" Fu Onlai said in a different way, intimidated by Su Jian's reputation in Sichuan. When the woman heard this, she immediately knelt down in tears and said, "Great Master, yesterday, this little girl's closest relative unfortunately passed away. Today, I came back from the funeral, but unexpectedly, I was met by this evil tyrant. He forcefully pulled this little girl away. When this little girl refused, he ordered people to beat this little girl up. This little girl is not a runaway servant from his residence." Chu Qingyan glared at Fu Onlai. "What a beast!" Seeing this, Fu Onlai wanted to swing the stick at her, but he was pulled back by a gentle force. He took a few steps back and only had time to see Su Jian retract his hand. Almsgiver Fu, greed, anger, infatuation, and hatred are the demons of the mortal world. Silence is a demon that confuses one's mind and messes up one's nature, Su Jian said with a smile. That's right, that's right. Bullying an innocent woman, what kind of man are you? Why haven't you left yet? Grandmaster is here. How can you be so rude? The spectators, who had been silent just now, were now snorting with anger. They treated Fu Onlai as a rat that everyone wanted to beat, and they spoke rudely and angrily. Chu Qingyan found it hard to believe. Just a moment ago, he had been an indifferent bystander, but now, he had become the embodiment of controversy. She could not help but look at Su Jian, who was as quiet as a mirror, and clicked her tongue. Could this be the power of faith? A monk could actually change the situation and control people's hearts. Fu Onlai saw that the situation was over, but he could not directly clash with Su Jian. He knew that Su Jian had always been an honored guest of the imperial family. Even his sister had to be courteous to him. There was no need for him to fall out with him over a woman. However, it was important to find a scapegoat for this embarrassing matter. Thus, Fu Onlai glared at Chu Qingyan. Don't ever let me see you again. Chu Qingyan shrugged indifferently. His inexplicable anger was directed at her. Only then did Fu Onlai lead his people back the way they had come. Thank you, Grandmaster. The woman immediately knelt in front of Su Jian, her heart filled with gratitude. Su Jian helped her up, then said, Miss, if you have no parents at home, leave the capital and seek refuge with your relatives. It's your fortune to be able to receive Grandmaster's guidance. That's right. It's hard for ordinary people to even get a word of advice from Grandmaster. The commoners all agreed. The woman immediately kowtowed. Thank you, Grandmaster, for your guidance. Go. Su Jian smiled. The woman immediately left after thanking him. Xining saw this and couldn't help but complain on behalf of her mistress. Mistress, you spent so much effort to save her, but she only cared about thanking Grandmaster Su Jian. She didn't even say a word of thanks to you. You saved her for nothing. Chu Qingyan didn't care much when she heard this. If I saved her just for a word of thanks, it would go against my original intentions. Humans are born good. I just didn't want to follow my heart and save her. I just wanted to have peace of mind. Perhaps if she didn't save her today, she would feel bad about it in her dreams. Actually, her original intentions weren't that noble. She just wanted peace of mind and not regret it. Xining immediately understood the superficial meaning of her words. She couldn't help but give her mistress a thumbs up. Mistress, you're awesome. Xining gives you 32 likes. Chu Qingyan shook her head and couldn't help laughing at this little fellow who applied what she had just learned. Her trip today wasn't over yet, so she couldn't delay any longer. Just as she was about to leave, she saw Su Jian standing in the crowd and looking at her. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but stop in her tracks. Although this person was wearing a Buddhist robe and doing things like a fraud, this person had saved her before, so she couldn't just leave like this. Thus, she walked up to him and looked up at him. Grandmaster, I didn't have time to thank you that day. Now, I'm formally thanking you. Chu Qingyan couldn't be blamed for always thinking of Su Jian as a fraud. It was because after he said those incomprehensible things in front of Xiao Su, she didn't have a good impression of him. She always kept a respectful distance from people who deliberately mystified things. Su Jian smiled. Benefactress doesn't need to be so polite. You've already thanked me once at that time. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head. She couldn't remember. Could it be that she had been scared silly at that time? However, she still had to return the favor. Why don't Qingyan play the host and treat you to a meal? Chu Qingyan asked casually. Actually, she didn't think that such a pure and simple person like Su Jian would eat with her. However, since he was here, she had to be polite. Su Jian originally wanted to decline, but on second thought, he agreed. Tea is fine. Turan looked at Su Jian in disbelief. Usually, it was almost impossible for high officials and nobles to invite him to a meeting. Now, this Chu Qingyan had only casually mentioned it, and he agreed. He suddenly felt that as long as Chu Qingyan was around, things would become strange. Chu Qingyan also choked. She had only casually mentioned it, so why did he also casually agree? Could it be that Buddhist disciples only knew how to recite sutras, but didn't know anything about the ways of the world? She was obviously just being polite. However, since words had been spoken, water had been spilled, so Chu Qingyan didn't hesitate. After this meal, she and Su Jian were even. She didn't have a good impression of Su Jian. It wasn't that this person looked extremely fierce. On the contrary, this person gathered spiritual energy. His handsome face could be said to be as pure and holy as a lotus flower. However, she wanted to keep a respectful distance from him because she felt that this person seemed to have a great impact on her and the people she cared about in the future. Chapter 93. Since he wanted to drink tea, Chu Qingyan found a tea house. Although it wasn't big, it was clean and tidy. "What kind of tea would you like to drink?" the waiter asked enthusiastically with a towel draped over his shoulder. After they sat down, Chu Qingyan asked with a smile, "What kind of tea do you have?" "Oolong tea, Biluakan tea, Tiguanyin tea, and all kinds of flower teas," the waiter said with great familiarity. "What kind of flower teas do you have?" Chu Qingyan was interested in flower teas. "We have jasmine tea, chrysanthemum tea, osmanthus tea, lotus tea." Chu Qingyan waited for him to finish before turning to ask Su Jian, who had been quietly acting like a handsome man, "What kind of tea would Great Master like to drink?" "It's up to you, Lady Benefactor," Su Jian replied with a smile. Chu Qingyan felt that the lotus tea was not bad and suited his temperament, so she asked for a pot. The waiter immediately agreed and turned to prepare the tea. Chu Qingyan rested her chin on her hands and looked at the person in front of her. She felt that it was quite awkward to look at each other in silence, so she thought of a topic to break the ice. "Great Master, I saw you send that person flying with a wave of your hand just now. Is that the legendary inner strength?" Su Jian smiled faintly. "You can say that. Great Master, you don't seem very old. How long have you been a Buddhist?" Before the tea was served, Chu Qingyan racked her brains to come up with a topic. "I grew up in a temple since I was young," Su Jian replied. There was another awkward silence after that. Su Jian seemed to know that she was looking for a topic to talk about and smiled faintly. "Benefactor, you don't have to deliberately greet me. Feel free to do as you please." Was it so easy for him to see through her thoughts? Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. Just as the tea was served, she took this opportunity to cover up her discomfort. Xining went forward to pour tea for the two of them. Chu Qingyan picked up the cup and blew on it before taking a sip. She found that the tea tasted good. It had a faint lotus fragrance with a hint of bitterness. He must have put in the lotus seed core, which had the effect of clearing heat and detoxifying. "It tastes good," Chu Qingyan praised from the bottom of her heart. When she put down the cup, she saw Su Jian holding the prayer beads in one hand and holding them forward with the other. His eyes were closed, as if he was isolated from the world. She couldn't help but chuckle. "Master, you're not here to drink tea but to smell the fragrance of the tea, right?" Su Jian faintly smiled. "The aroma is a part of the tea. If you know the tiniest details, you will know the taste. Whether you drink it or not isn't that important." Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. This person was too boring. Drinking tea was like chanting scriptures. However, how he drank tea had nothing to do with her. Anyway, she was in charge of treating him. Just as Chu Qingyan finished her second cup, the person in front of her opened his eyes and looked at her. His gaze was emotionless. Benefactress, there's something this penniless monk doesn't understand. Even the master has something he doesn't understand. Chu Qingyan was surprised. In the myriad worlds, there will always be things that you don't understand. Buddhism is a path of seeking knowledge and attaining the Tao. Su Jian didn't feel embarrassed by her surprise. Instead, he spoke in a natural and unrestrained manner. Qingyan is very honored to be asked by the master. However, the master is very experienced and knowledgeable. I'm afraid that Qingyan might not be able to answer your question. Chu Qingyan propped up her chin with one hand and replied indifferently. Su Jian smiled. It's fine. What this penniless monk doesn't understand is, when so many people were indifferent, why did Benefactress stand up? At that time, her attendants had been standing behind her without any intention of saving her. He had walked so many roads and seen so many injustices. It wasn't that no one had ever stood up for justice. However, at her age, she still dared to stand up as a young woman. This really surprised him. He hadn't expected that he would ask about this matter. Chu Qingyan smiled lazily. Master, I'm just doing something that I won't regret. What do you mean? He asked. I can't just stand by and watch someone die. Perhaps the master thinks that I'm overestimating myself, but I just thought that if that person was me and no one was willing to stand up for her, I would feel despair towards this world. There is no kindness between people. I believe in the butterfly effect. When one person stands up, it will affect others. When one person affects another, more and more people will stand up. She was just speaking her thoughts in the modern world. However, she knew that in ancient times, there was a clear distinction between hierarchy and inferiority. Those with power were in control, while those at the bottom were as lowly as ants. Who would care about kindness and evil? High officials and nobles cared about power, while commoners cared about food and clothing. Although her ideas in the modern world didn't conflict with those in the modern world, they couldn't find a point of agreement. Thinking of this, she felt a little sad. Su Jian was silent for a moment. Then, he raised his head and looked at her. There seemed to be a slightly different light in his compassionate gaze. Benefactress has a kind heart. Thank you for the master's praise. Chu Qingyan smiled carelessly. Actually, this wasn't rare. In the modern world, many people would stand up because there were more good people than bad people. Moreover, in a society ruled by law, the bad people wouldn't dare to be so rampant. Even if they used their status to bully others, they would be exposed on the internet and become the target of public criticism. It was just a different era. She did what she wanted to do. Then if there was a second time, would Benefactress still step in to save someone? Su Jian continued to ask. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment. I'll make a decision after assessing the situation. After all, it's not my original intention to fight against a rock with an egg. I'll act according to my ability. I can't be reckless. Su Jian smiled. Although her answer was a little different from her previous answer, he could understand the meaning behind it if he thought about it carefully. Does Benefactress want to stop this kind of thing? Chu Qingyan looked at him in confusion. What does the master mean? I want to use kindness to change the world and reduce the number of incidents like today. Su Jian smiled faintly. Chu Qingyan's eyes widened. Why couldn't she understand what he was saying? Seeing that she was still looking at him blankly, Su Jian patiently said, This penniless monk will guide you into Buddhism. In the future, you will follow this penniless monk and preach Buddhism. You will use the Dharma to change the world. You will make good people more virtuous and evil people more virtuous. Chu Qingyan felt like she had just heard the funniest joke in the world. Someone was actually advising her to become a nun. If this were the modern world and her parents found out, they would probably think that this person was spouting nonsense. Her father would probably flip his hand and throw this person out of the door. Just as Chu Qingyan was about to laugh out loud, she saw the handsome youth in front of her smiling and looking at her seriously. Chu Qingyan's smile froze on her face. She said in disbelief, "The master must be joking, right? Monks don't lie." Su Jian smiled, but his tone was serious. "Why me?" Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask. "Because you have an affinity with Buddha," Su Jian replied. The corners of Chu Qingyan's eyes twitched. Which eye of his saw that she had an affinity with Buddha? "Master, do you often do this, swindling some young boys and girls who don't know about worldly affairs into Buddhism?" Su Jian didn't get angry when faced with her questioning, dissatisfaction, and rudeness. Instead, he smiled and said, "You are indeed not the first person this penniless monk has converted." Chu Qingyan immediately believed in her own thoughts. As expected, he was tricking her again. Then she heard him say, "It's just that this penniless monk doesn't take in disciples easily. You are the first." She looked up in surprise and met his eyes. It was as if she saw lotus flowers blooming in his eyes. They were so noble and pure that she didn't dare to look directly at them. Chapter 94. Chu Qingyan snapped out of her daze under his calm gaze. She suddenly felt a little irritated. "Master, although I revere Buddhism, I have no intention of becoming a monk. Furthermore, don't you think it's a little ridiculous to say such things to a 10-year-old child? Who would want to be his disciple? Who knew if this charlatan would turn her into a little charlatan and swindle people everywhere?" Besides, she did not want to be accompanied by the sound of wooden fish and bells for the rest of her life. Although the rain is broad, it is difficult to moisten the rootless grass. Buddhism is vast and does not help those who are not fated. Age does not matter. Female benefactor, you have the root of wisdom. It will be a pity if you do not enter Buddhism. Su Jian guided patiently. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. According to what he said, everyone had a root of wisdom, and everyone should enter the Buddhist sect. If that were the case, then the entire world would be filled with monks. Chu Qingyan wanted to retort, but seeing his firm attitude, it seemed like he really wanted to pull her into Buddhism. She really wanted to flip the table, but in the end, she held it in. She recalled everyone's reverence for him just now. She did not want to attract public resentment. Since he wanted her to enter Buddhism, she would have a talk with him. "Master, what are the benefits of becoming a monk?" Chu Qingyan asked. "It's not because of the benefits. It's because everything is empty. Greed, anger, obsession, and hatred are the 8 sufferings of life. Instead of being entangled in the world, it's better to enter Buddhism and cultivate one's body and mind," Su Jian said with a straight face. "No." Chu Qingyan raised her finger and shook her hand. "Oh. Female benefactor, what do you think?" Su Jian looked at her seriously. "Everything is empty. That's your pessimistic view. In your eyes, everything in the world is but an instant. Things remain, people change, and people change. It's like flowers blooming and withering. It's just going back and forth from the beginning to the end. There's no change. The only thing that changes is the shape of the flower, whether it blooms or withers." Although Chu Qingyan was smiling, the smile did not reach her eyes. She could see that Su Jian did not agree, so she could not help but narrow her eyes and continue. "And in the eyes of us laymen, everything that happens in life is worth it. The people and things that we experience will leave a memory in our mind. Every time we think about it, it is very meaningful." "I feel that you have misinterpreted my meaning," Su Jian said with a smile. "Please enlighten me, Grandmaster." Chu Qingyan cupped her fists and said. "Because there is nowhere to go, the heart is born. All living beings will forever sink into the sea of bitterness. They will form evil karma and float in the sea of sin." At this point, Su Jian looked at her with merciful eyes. He closed his eyes and continued. "To become a monk and pay respect to Buddha is to have a tranquil and peaceful life, to be free from greed and desires, and to have a tranquil and free heart. The so-called seeing through the world of mortals is not pessimistic, but more positive and optimistic. It's not to see through, but to see through. It's not to do nothing, but to do it in time. It's not to ask for nothing, but to be content with everything. Ba. Chu Qingyan had to admit that the young monk in front of her sat there quietly and peacefully. Just by looking at her with his eyes that were filled with great wisdom, he had an inexplicable power that made people feel at ease. If she were a bystander, she would have been convinced by him. Just him sitting there was an irrefutable argument. Unfortunately, he wanted to pull her into his trap and become a disciple of Buddhism. She could have just walked away, but his determined expression made her angry. If she did not argue with him, she was afraid that she would not be able to swallow this anger. Master, your attainments in Buddhism are very high. In Buddhism, Qingyan cannot argue with you, but Qingyan yearns to enjoy herself in the world of mortals, not to see through the world of mortals. I live in the world of mortals and I like it. I like it. Sometimes I'm happy, and sometimes I'm unrestrained. I feel that life is unpredictable, which is surprising and interesting. If I really become a monk, my family will be far away, my friends will be far away, and I will be alone in my pursuit of Buddha. When I'm cold, no one will care for me. When I'm sick, no one will take care of me, and I'll die alone. In the face of Chu Qingyan's provocation and disrespect, Su Jian frowned slightly. Benefactress, becoming a monk is not the same as being alone. On the path of seeking Buddha, one's heart will not feel lonely. As a disciple of Buddhism, there is camaraderie and mutual support. You don't have to worry. If you enter Buddhism and take this poor monk as your master, this poor monk will definitely support you. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Jian saw her crafty eyes looking at him. Su Jian had a faint feeling of unease in his heart, but he heard her speak. Master, didn't you say that the 6 senses are pure and have no 7 emotions and 6 desires? You don't need emotions, but you feel pity for Qingyan. Don't you think that's already going against Buddhism? Chu Qingyan's bright eyes turned as she smiled back at him. Su Jian couldn't help but find it a little funny. She was beating around the bush to lure him into her trap. Although she was young, she was definitely smart. She had originally wanted to wait for him to be defeated, but unexpectedly, his eyes were smiling clearly. She knew that he had already seen through her intentions. The smile on Chu Qingyan's face froze, then she narrowed her eyes again. Then, to everyone's surprise, she waved her hand to call the waiter over. Dear customer, is there anything else you need? The waiter asked with a warm smile. Su Jian couldn't understand why Chu Qingyan had said such a good thing, so he quietly waited for her to speak. He saw Chu Qingyan reveal a sly smile, but it quickly disappeared. She said to the waiter in a clear voice, "Waiter, do you have pork jerky and beef jerky here?" "Yes, yes, yes. Not only that, we also have crispy chicken wings, specially made duck head, stir-fried duck gizzards." The waiter immediately began listing out his treasures. Okay. Give me everything you just said. Chu Qingyan waved her hand and said generously. The waiter immediately accepted the order happily and left. After Chu Qingyan finished giving her orders, she looked up and coincidentally saw Su Jian's frown. She couldn't help but be in a good mood. Soon, the dishes were placed one by one. Benefactress, what is the meaning of this? Su Jian looked at the table full of dishes and finally looked at her. If I enter Buddhism, can Qingyan still have a stomach full of food? Only people in the secular world can enjoy these dishes. Master, do you want to try a bite? She held out the chicken wing to tempt him. Su Jian only closed his eyes and recited, Amitabha, Buddha is merciful. Chu Qingyan chuckled and took a big bite before continuing, that's right. Master, what I want to say is that when a person lives, they must be happy when they are complacent. Don't let a golden goblet face the moon. Enjoy yourself when you are happy. When you are sad, laugh loudly. When you are sad, cry loudly. Don't want to live a dull life in vain. Perhaps you're right. I've seen through the world of mortals, my 6 senses are pure, no sorrow, no joy, no love, no hate. I won't be burdened by fame and fortune, won't be plagued by greed, anger, stupidity, and hate. But that is not the life Qing Yan yearns for. Qing Yan wants freedom. If I fall, I will get up again. I have never lost my desire for life, nor have I lost my despair for love. I am happy because of love and feel sorry for myself because of pain. I don't need Buddha to save me. I only need to save myself. Su Jian widened his eyes and watched her put down the teacup. Although her lips were stained with oil, her eyes were sparkling. He suddenly didn't know how to persuade her. At this moment, Turan, who had gone out at some point, returned. He said to Chu Qingyan, "Lord is already at the door. He is waiting for Miss to go back together." Chapter 95. What? The big ice cube actually came to pick her up? This was simply too amazing. Chu Qingyan couldn't restrain her emotions and gave Su Jian an apologetic smile. "Great Master, someone from the residence is here. I have to go back first. If there's a chance in the future, I'll come back to discuss Buddhism." Su Jian knew that it would be difficult to convince her today, so he dismissed the idea. He put his palms together and said, "Benefactress, please go ahead." Chu Qingyan nodded and then called the waiter over to settle the bill. The waiter giggled and declined, saying that it was the owner's honor to see Great Master Su Jian's rare patronage and so on. Chu Qingyan almost fell asleep listening to him. In short, she didn't have to pay for this meal. Thus, Chu Qingyan happily bid farewell to Su Jian and quickly led Xining and the others out of the door. Su Jian looked at the table full of meat and then glanced at the figure leaving with light steps. A faint trace of worry appeared on his face. "Why do you want me to enter Buddhism?" She had asked him earlier, but he hadn't answered her directly. "Why do you want me to enter Buddhism?" He couldn't answer this question. The Buddhist lotus blooms in the mud. If one's heart is pure, one will not be tainted. She was still young, but she was already in the mud. Whether she could emerge from the mud untainted, the answer would be revealed many years later. However, he couldn't bet the world on it. The divination showed that she would stir up a storm of blood in Sichuan and even the world. Apart from this, there was another tribulation. This tribulation was related to him. Su Jian stood up and walked out amidst the waiter's eager smiles. At the corner of the street, he looked at the small figure bouncing in front of the handsome man. Who would have guessed that this young and tender girl was his fiery phoenix? Su Jian retracted his gaze and turned around, refusing to leave. Big Ice Cube, why are you here?" Chu Qingyan put her hands behind her back and leaned forward. Her face was filled with the innocence of a child. Xiao Su's gaze peered through the gauze hat and landed on the noble figure leaving the street corner. He said casually, "I just happened to pass by after court." Chu Qingyan choked. All right, reality was so cruel. She thought that he had specially come to pick her up. Xining saw her master's colorful expression and couldn't help but purse her lips and laugh. Her master was really stupid. If Lord hadn't specially come to pick her up, he would have directly gone home after court. Why would he wait for her at the door? After a moment of disappointment, Chu Qingyan regained her smile and followed behind him. "Let's go home, then. I'm hungry." When Xiao Su heard her say that she was hungry, he turned to look at her. He glanced at Xining, Tu Ling, and the others, then frowned. "What did you play today?" Why were his hands empty? He didn't buy anything. "I strolled around and even went to drink flower tea. Lotus tea. It's not bad, but the store didn't charge me." Chu Qingyan thought back to today's trip and seriously replied. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Could it be that the Wang Fu didn't give her a monthly allowance, so she didn't buy anything? Even the tea she drank was treated by the store. He, the great lord of Sichuan country, couldn't even raise a child. If this got out, he would be a joke. He would have the steward give her a monthly allowance when he got back. His people could only be willful and squander money. They didn't have the right to wrong themselves. After Chu Qingyan finished replying, the person beside her didn't reply for a long time. She couldn't help but raise her head to look at him. It was a pity that he was wearing a veil and she couldn't see his expression. She only knew that his gaze on her seemed to contain a trace of displeasure. She didn't know where she said the wrong thing. She couldn't help rubbing her nose and didn't make a sound. At this time, when they arrived in front of Xiao Su's carriage, there was a sudden gust of wind with the fragrance of a woman's rouge. Just as Chu Qingyan was wondering where this fragrance was coming from, a pleasant female voice came from the right side. His Royal Highness. It really is a coincidence. I didn't think that I would meet you here. This voice contained a bit of excitement, but it also hid a nervous surprise. Chu Qingyan heard this and stopped her steps. She looked towards the source of the voice and saw a woman wearing a dark green robe. She was accompanied by two servant girls as they walked over with light steps. When they came closer, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. What a beautiful woman with long eyebrows and a slight smile. At this time, she saw that her gaze was firmly on Xiao Su. Even if Chu Qingyan had never been in love, she could see that the woman in front of her liked Xiao Su. But Chu Qingyan was very curious. Xiao Su, this big block of ice, would take the initiative to strike up a conversation with a woman. Moreover, it was a woman as beautiful as a flower. How would he deal with it? Who are you? Xiao Su was a little surprised that he had been recognized outside, but he didn't take it to heart. He only looked at the person with a sharp gaze. As soon as he said this, Chu Qingyan clearly saw that the woman's expression changed slightly. She seemed to be a little frustrated, but she quickly returned to normal. With a smile, she said softly, "This little girl's surname is Yao, and my name is Ingrua. I am the granddaughter of the current Grand Tutor. Previously at the palace banquet, I met your highness a few times. It is normal that your highness doesn't remember this little girl. Today, this little girl saw the carriage of the King of England's residence and guessed that your highness was nearby. I didn't expect to see your highness appear when I turned around. I hope your highness doesn't mind." In just a few words, she introduced herself, led to the reason why they knew each other, and also explained why she was here. Chu Qingyan smacked her lips. This woman's eloquence wasn't bad. She knew when to advance and retreat. She didn't know what the big block of ice who was hit on would think. She was very curious. Xiao Su indifferently replied. Yao Ingrua saw that the other party's tone was cold and that he was about to leave. She felt anxious and pursed her lips. She thought about how to break this awkward situation. Suddenly, she had an idea and her lips curled up. She took a step forward and curtsied, "Your Highness, Ingrua usually has nothing to do and likes to write poems. Would it be possible for me to have an opportunity to discuss it with your Highness? This prince is not a civil official. Miss Yao has found the wrong person." Xiao Su was still cold. Most people would politely respond to such a beautiful woman with both talent and appearance. Even if they weren't good enough, they would still say a few perfunctory words. However, Chu Qingyan didn't expect that the big block of ice would be so simple and direct. Yao Ingrua choked. Although she was a little hurt, she still persevered and didn't give up. "Ingrua doesn't know martial arts. Otherwise, I would be able to discuss swords and sabers with your Highness. I heard that your Highness is stationed at the border all year round. I wonder if the scenery beyond the Great Wall is more spectacular and beautiful than the scenery in our capital city?" Xiao Su frowned. This prince is fighting wars and protecting the country. This prince isn't enjoying life. I'm afraid that Miss Yao has found the wrong person. Yao Ingrua's delicate body couldn't withstand his cold tone. Her face immediately paled. Talking to strangers was already his limit. If it wasn't for the fact that she was Grand Tutor Yao's grandson, he would have already left. The children at home don't starve. Forgive this prince for not being able to accompany you. After speaking, Xiaosu didn't wait for the other party to pass by. The children at home? Was he talking about her? Chu Qingyan blinked. At this moment, as if to verify her thoughts, Xiaosu stopped and turned around to look at her. His tone was impatient. Aren't you hungry? Hurry up. Oh, I'm coming. Chu Qingyan saw that Yao Yingruo's expression was a little ugly and immediately ran towards Xiaosu. Chapter 96. After climbing into the carriage, Chu Qingyan turned around to look at Yao Yingruo, who was standing by the roadside. She happened to meet Yao Yingruo's jealous gaze. Chu Qingyan shuddered. She clearly didn't do anything or say anything. She wasn't the one who rejected Yao Yingruo, so why did Yao Yingruo hate her? Could it be that she was staring at the wrong person? Chu Qingyan didn't think much of it and slipped into the carriage. She just happened to meet Xiaosu's gaze. At this moment, Xiaosu had already taken off his veil, revealing his deep, dark eyes. Chu Qingyan guffawed, probably because he was impatient with her speed. She quickly sat down in front of him. The wheels rolled and left in front of Yao Yingruo. Yao Yingruo's maidservant, Tao Hong, said indignantly, "That King of England is too rude." Miss spoke to him so nicely, but he didn't know what was good for him. He's just a lord who has fallen out of favor, yet he dares to give Miss a hard time. You're not allowed to say that. Yao Yingruo angrily glared at the maidservant. What do you know? The King of England is a famous general. It's normal for him to be arrogant. Besides, he only forgot about me. As long as I appear in front of him more often in the future, he will definitely remember me. Tao Hong immediately lowered her head and begged for mercy. Miss, this servant knows her mistake. On the other hand, the other servant girl, Lu Yi, had a fawning smile as she said, Young miss, don't worry. With your celestial beauty and innate talent, you will definitely make King Ying treat you differently. These words made Yao Yingruo's heart burst with joy. Her battered mood recovered quite a bit. Then, her eyes were filled with shyness and a hint of determination. I will definitely make King Ying treat me differently. She was the eldest granddaughter of the imperial tutor's concubine. Her family was prominent, her appearance wasn't bad, and she was famous for her talent. How was she not worthy of him? With such pride, Yao Yingruo coldly looked at the carriage. Chu Qingyan, is it? What is she? How can she be worthy of His Highness? What a joke. That's right, that's right. Tao Hong and Lu Yi agreed. The carriage gradually moved further and further away. Yao Yingruo turned around and left with the two maids. At this moment, Chu Qingyan was sitting upright and still with her hands on her knees. From time to time, she would turn the pearl and secretly size up the person in front of her. Xiaosu couldn't ignore her burning gaze even if he didn't want to. In the end, he simply put down the book and stared at the person in front of him who wanted to look away. If you want to ask, then ask. Chu Qingyan chuckled, her serious face suddenly changed into a gossipy one. Your Highness, what do you think of that woman just now? This prince didn't notice. Xiaosu didn't expect her to ask this and raised his brows. Oh, then does your Highness treat strangers like this? Chu Qingyan continued. Something like that, Xiaosu replied calmly. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she tilted her head and her posture wasn't as serious as before. She asked curiously, Your Highness, you're about to reach the age of 20. Do you have any close female friends or a woman that you like? Xiaosu's gaze immediately became impatient. You're so young, yet you don't ask about the 4 books and 5 classics. Instead, you're asking for a beating. The person in front of her suddenly changed from being a big ice cube to being a strict father. This made Chu Qingyan a little uncomfortable. However, after being together for a long time, she also knew that he wouldn't hit her. Thus, her courage grew and she immediately leaned over and hugged his arm. Her voice was cute and naive as she said, I'm just curious. Don't try to change the topic. Xiao Su was instantly angry and amused. When did he give her the courage to come over when he was unhappy? If it was his subordinates, they would have already kept a respectful distance. How could they be like her who didn't know what was good for her? However, because of her clinginess, he didn't feel so impatient. Nothing. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Nothing? You don't have a close female friend or a girl you like? Faced with the person beside him who wanted a yard after getting an inch, Xiao Su felt a headache coming on. Neither. Xiao Su pulled his hand out of her arms and lazily leaned against the pillow as he replied indifferently. Why? Chu Qingyan expressed her surprise. Xiao Su frowned because of her tone. What's so strange about that? Ben Wang is always outside, protecting the country. I don't have the heart for these romantic affairs. Chu Qingyan instantly widened her eyes. But when soldiers are outside, don't they have many girls to serve them? When she finished speaking, Xiao Su narrowed his eyes and looked at her sternly. Is this something a girl should know? Who told you these things? Xiao Su was enraged. She was a pure and innocent young lady, yet she actually knew about the filthy affairs of the military prostitutes. If he knew who had been whispering these things to her, he would definitely punish them severely. Chu Qingyan rarely saw him angry, so she immediately felt the entire carriage freeze. In order to stop the cold air from spreading, she bravely threw herself at him and hugged his arm. She giggled, no one taught me, I just heard it from outside. In the future, don't listen to other people's nonsense. Xiao Su didn't reject her approach and the cold air dissipated a lot, but his tone was still stern. Yes, Your Highness. Chu Qingyan immediately raised her hand and placed it beside her temple, looking very obedient. Although Xiao Su didn't know what she meant by this action, he felt that she looked funny and cute. Moreover, when these words came out of her mouth, his heart softened. Feeling that the big ice block was no longer angry, Chu Qingyan continued on her path of gossip. If she were to evaluate her actions at that time, there were only a few words that were suitable for her. If she didn't do it, she wouldn't have died. Then Your Highness, in the future, when you are in the capital, those women who admire you will take the opportunity to get to know you. Perhaps you will be able to find a woman to spend the rest of your life with. Chu Qingyan blinked her eyes. She had already completely forgotten her own identity. She simply felt that the big ice block, who sacrificed his own happiness for the country, should be blessed by the heavens. Although she had heard many bad rumors about him before, after interacting with him for real, she found that the rumors were wrong. The big ice block was a rare and precious man. Xiao Su closed his eyes and rested. He didn't care and said, not interested. Why not? Chu Qingyan didn't understand. Could it be that she didn't have the potential to be a matchmaker? Women are too annoying. When Xiao Su thought of those beautiful women, he was a bit annoyed. Chu Qingyan thought of something in shock. She had heard the servants say that the big ice block never approached women. Then did he have something that was hard to say? Or was he interested in men? Heavens, this news was too shocking. There was no more chatter in his ears. Xiao Su seemed to have thought of something. He opened his eyes and looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. Yatu, don't forget your identity. What identity can I have? Chu Qingyan didn't react. You are the King of England's imperial consort personally bestowed by the Emperor. So, it's enough for this king to raise a little princess consort. Xiao Su continued to close his eyes to rest, ignoring the others' excitement. But I'm still a child. This king isn't in a hurry. What does this have to do with you being in a hurry? Also, why did the conversation turn to this topic? Chu Qingyan wanted to cry, but no tears came out. One didn't understand romance, the other didn't know anything about romance. So the two of them talked like chickens and ducks, but they were harmonious. Who said that? If you like a person, it's best to start from a baby. Chapter 97. They chatted all the way back to the King of England's residence. The servants came to lead the carriage, but they saw Chu Qingyan in their lord's carriage. Everyone was shocked. The lord had actually personally gone to pick up the young princess consort. Lord, young princess consort. The servants immediately bowed respectfully. Ever since the lord had offended the popular people of the inner courtyard, Hong Yi and Zi, for Chu Qingyan, the onlookers finally understood that this Chu Qingyan was extremely favored by the lord. They could offend anyone, but they could not offend this little ancestor. Thus, everyone changed the way they addressed her. Chu Qingyan also changed from 9th Miss Chu to young princess consort. This form of address represented that Chu Qingyan's identity was recognized. However, Chu Qingyan did not feel anything. She only felt that the 3 words young princess consort were shorter and easier to call than her name. Once they got off the carriage, Xiaosu walked in front with large strides. When Chu Qingyan steadied herself, he was already far away. Thus, she lifted her skirt and chased after him. Wait for me. Xiaosu ignored her. Ah, the young princess consort actually dared to make the lord wait for her? Servant A covered his eyes, waiting for the lord to get angry. "Oh, my feet." Xiaosu stopped in his tracks when he heard the sound. He turned around and saw her smiling triumphantly. Ah, the young princess consort actually dared to trick the lord? Servant B covered his eyes, waiting for the lord to get angry. "Big ice cube, you walked too fast. I almost couldn't keep up." Chu Qingyan ran in front of him and complained. Ah, the young princess consort actually dared to complain about the lord. Servant C covered his eyes, waiting for the lord to get angry. Xiaosu glanced at her. "Your physical fitness is too poor." Chu Qingyan widened her eyes. He actually despised her physical fitness. Her legs weren't as long as his, and she was still a girl, okay? Seeing that Xiaosu was about to turn around and leave, Chu Qingyan immediately squatted down and hugged her calf. "It hurts. I walked too fast. The injury seems to be acting up again." Xiaosu looked at her suspiciously. "You hurt this leg?" Chu Qingyan looked down and realized that she had hugged the wrong leg. She decisively changed to another leg and then looked up at him pitifully. Xiaosu thought it was funny, but he seemed to compromise a little. He walked up to her, grabbed her with both hands, and threw her on his back. "Hold on tight." "Understood." One was cold. One of them was pretending to be obedient after getting a bargain. When the servants released their fingers and saw this scene, their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Did the sun rise from the west? Is it raining red? Snow in June? Otherwise, were they dreaming? I have a donkey, but I never ride it. One day, I rode it to the market on a whim. I had a whip in my hand. Shut up. Oh, okay. The sun shines in the sky, the flowers smile at me, the birds say good morning. Why are you carrying a bag of explosives? If you sing again, I'll throw you down. Understood. Xiaosu's eyes twitched. What was wrong with him just now? Why did he become so soft-hearted and carry this burden? In the study room in the middle of the night, Xiaosu sat behind the desk, half of his body hidden in the darkness. Today, 9th Miss Chu visited a rouge powder stall, a porcelain stall, a handmade toy stall. Turin reported everything in detail. Xiaosu tapped his fingers on the table and listened quietly. Then, she met the eldest son of the Fu family, Fu Onlai, who was beating up an orphan girl. 9th Miss Chu stood up to protect her, Turin said disapprovingly. Xiaosu said lightly, continue. Then, Master Su Jian appeared and stopped Fu Onlai. 9th Miss Chu invited him to the tea house, but... Turin paused hesitantly. But what? Xiaosu looked up at him. But Master Su Jian actually wanted to persuade 9th Miss Chu to shave her head and become a monk. Turin reported truthfully. Xiaosu's fingers stopped tapping on the table. He frowned and said, "Become a monk." Turan nodded and reported the battle of words between the two of them in the tea house. After listening, Xiao Su's lips curled into a smile. As expected of one of his men, his eloquence could even make Su Jian dizzy. However, his smile quickly disappeared. He took this matter to heart. If it had been someone else, he would have ignored it. However, this person was Su Jian. He would not bring up this matter for no reason. Seeing that Lord was deep in thought, Turan stood still. After a while, Xiao Su came back to his senses and said casually, "You seem to have a problem with Qing Yan." Turan thought that he had concealed it well, but his master must have noticed something from the way he addressed her. He did not deny it and nodded. "Master, it's not that I have a problem with her, but I can't treat her as the future mistress of the prince's residence." Xiao Su looked at him lightly. "Her status has already been determined. You have to do it even if you can't." Turan sensed that his master was protecting her in his words. Although he resisted, he still agreed. "I understand." Knowing that he was upset, Xiao Su said, "She is the King of England's imperial consort, appointed by the retired emperor himself. If someone finds out about this, it will be considered disobeying the imperial edict. You know the consequences." Turan immediately understood that Lord was afraid that someone would take the opportunity to make trouble. He immediately bowed and said, "I didn't think it through. I won't do it again." Xiao Su waved his hand and dismissed him. He sat quietly in the study for a while, his body covered in the frost of the night. Then, he slowly walked out of the study and passed by Chu Qingyan's room, entering it out of habit. Chu Qingyan was still awake. Hearing his footsteps, she got up and looked at him apologetically. "Big Ice Cube, there's something I need to tell you. I seem to have caused you trouble." "About Fu Anlai?" Chu Qingyan, who was thinking about how to tell him, was surprised. "You know about it?" "Yes, it's nothing. Go to sleep." Xiao Su covered her with the blanket. Chu Qingyan forced herself to stay awake. She had wanted to talk to him about this matter, and since it had been resolved, she could finally relax and sleep. Xiao Su took a look at her sleeping face and got up to leave. There were too many grudges with the Fu family, this one did not make a difference. Ever since Xiao Su stopped restricting her freedom, Chu Qingyan was like a bird that had been released from its cage, flying everywhere. One day, the weather was good and she wanted to go out to play. She had wanted to ask Xiao Su to go out with her, but he had disappeared early in the morning. So Chu Qingyan dismissed the idea and went back to her room to change. She happened to run into Hong Yi in the corridor. Ever since Big Ice Cube punished Hong Yi because of Z, she rarely saw Hong Yi. She greeted Hong Yi embarrassedly. After all, she was the cause of the incident. Hong Yi did not seem to be affected by what had happened and replied politely, "Are you going out?" Chu Qingyan nodded. Then she thought of something and asked with a smile, "Does the Fu have men's clothing of my age?" Hong Yi shook her head awkwardly. "This servant does not have any on hand, but this servant can ask Cheng Yi. She usually takes care of these clothes." This servant remembers that Lord did not wear some clothes when he was young. If Xiao Wangfei does not mind, this servant can take them out and use them. "Why would I mind? This is already very good," Chu Qingyan said. So Hong Yi asked a servant to ask Cheng Yi. The servant quickly came back, "Cheng Yi Jie said she does not have any." Hong Yi frowned. "Tell Cheng Yi to come over and reply." The servant immediately left. After a while, Cheng Yi's sharp voice came from afar. "Hong Yi Jie, why did you call me over in such a hurry?" Chapter 98. Cheng Yi sauntered over. When she saw Chu Qingyan and Hong Yi standing together, jealousy flashed through her eyes. Then she smiled and curtsied to Chu Qingyan, "Greetings to little Wangfei." Chu Qingyan felt that this voice made the hairs on her body stand on end. She grinned slightly in response. She always felt that this Cheng Yi was strange, and she still couldn't escape this feeling today. Hong Yi said with a smile, I called you here for another matter. Aren't you in charge of Lord's daily clothes? Little Wang Fei wants to go out and play. Maybe it's not very convenient to wear women's clothes, so she wants to find some men's clothes. I remember that Lord has several sets of clothes from when he was young that he hasn't worn. I wanted you to take them out for little Wang Fei. So it's this matter. That servant didn't say it clearly, so I didn't understand. He does have them. After Cheng Yi finished speaking to Hong Yi, she turned and smiled at Chu Qingyan, little Wang Fei, it's that servant's fault for not doing a good job. This servant will go find them for you. Thank you for your trouble, Cheng Yi Jijie. Chu Qingyan obediently responded. Cheng Yi walked towards the clothing pavilion. The moment she turned, the smile on her face turned into a vicious expression. She unwillingly went to get the clothes. After Cheng Yi got the clothes, Chu Qingyan thanked her and then returned to her room with Xining. Seeing Chu Qingyan leave, Cheng Yi dropped her fake smile and said to the person beside her, don't you feel that she's gaining a foothold in the Wang Fu? Hong Yi smiled slightly, she's the future mistress. It's normal for her to gain a foothold. Cheng Yi snorted coldly, but you didn't notice that Lord is becoming more and more attentive to her. What do you think she has that Lord will treat her differently? Hong Yi looked at her with confusion in her eyes, maybe little Wang Fei has the ability to make Lord treat her differently. Why are you in such a hurry? Being asked by Hong Yi, Cheng Yi almost choked, only you can swallow this. I won't allow such a lowly woman to climb to the highest position in the Wang Fu. Hong Yi frowned, Cheng Yi, don't say that. If this reaches Lord's ears, I'm afraid you, Hong Yi didn't finish, but the two knew what the outcome would be. However, Cheng Yi gave a fake smile, Hong Yi Jijie, I'll only say this to you. You won. You won't disregard our sisterly relationship and report me to Lord. Hong Yi sighed softly, Cheng Yi, you've been unable to control your mouth since you were young. Of course, I won't say it, but you shouldn't go around spreading it. Otherwise, even I won't be able to protect you. Cheng Yi chuckled with a hint of self-mockery, Hong Yi Jijie, do you think that after Chu Qingyan stabilizes that position, there will still be a place for us? Hong Yi frowned slightly. Cheng Yi didn't wait for her to reply and continued, do you still not understand Ziyi's situation? This Chu Qingyan is still young, but her schemes are not shallow. If it wasn't for her indulgence, would Ziyi have been taken back to be re-educated in less than 3 days? And because of this, you have lost face in front of Lord. I think this is just the beginning. As long as she has a certain amount of power, the first people she will get rid of are us 7 maidservants. Hong Yi Jijie, you should also make plans early so that you don't end up in a bad situation. Cheng Yi sighed, left a meaningful look, and then turned to leave. Hong Yi thoughtfully looked at Cheng Yi's departing figure, then revealed a faint smile. Cheng Yi wanted her to be the one to stand out, so she was trying to make her look bad. If she made the first move, she might be able to help her get rid of Chu Qingyan, this thorn in her side. But she wasn't an impulsive 15 or 16-year-old girl who could be intimidated by others. Hong Yi smiled and slowly left, as if nothing had happened. She didn't need to get involved in this muddy water. Chu Qingyan naturally didn't know what the 2 maidservants said after she left. After she returned to her room and changed her clothes, she felt that they fit her very well. She heard that these were the clothes that Big Ice Cube wore when he was 6 or 7 years old. Chu Qingyan looked at her own 10-year-old body and suddenly felt infuriated. She comforted herself that boys and girls grew up differently. She developed late, not underdeveloped. After comforting herself, Chu Qingyan pulled Xining out of the room. This time, the one waiting for her outside the door wasn't Turan, but Huoling. When Huoling saw Chu Qingyan come out dressed as a man, his eyes lit up. Such a beautiful young man. Faced with Chu Qingyan's wide eyes, Huoling came back to his senses. He gave a few soft coughs and said unnaturally, "Little princess, Turan isn't feeling well, so let Huoling come over to serve." Chu Qingyan looked at him suspiciously. Last time when father came, Hualing seemed to have used this excuse to trick Turan into guarding the study. Hualing didn't know that Chu Qingyan had seen through the back and forth between him and Turan. His heart was filled with resentment. Didn't he just scheme against Turan once? This time, he was tricked by him with the same excuse from before. Towards Turan, Chu Qingyan clearly had a much better impression of Hualing. At least Hualing was kind to her on the surface. Also, he and her father had a strong affection for each other before. Although this was just her own guess, it shouldn't be wrong. Let's go, Hualing Darren. Chu Qingyan said to him with a playful smile, just like a child. Hualing's eyes twitched. He was a first-class fierce cavalry expert by the Lord's side. How could he suddenly be reduced to a little girl's manservant? In the words of old Master Chu, it was one thought to go to heaven and one thought to go to hell. But this was the task given by the Lord. He and Turan did not dare to slack off. So no matter how proud he was of his identity, he could only be a follower right now. But what was worth consoling was that the person he was protecting was not low in status. At least, she was their future little princess, although it might be temporary. So the group of people went out again. A few days ago, after studying the tourist route of the capital, it should be said that it was a list of interesting scenic spots, Chu Qingyan decided to go to the street by the east gate this time. She heard that there were many strange things there. If she liked to hunt for novelty, she could go there for a walk. Thus, Chu Qingyan led her men and headed straight for the eastern city gate. At this time, a purple-clothed figure swept over the high wall and quickly moved on the street. "Young master, that person is chasing after us," the black-clothed man beside him reported. The purple-clothed man frowned slightly. His charming eyes flashed with a strange light, faintly revealing his displeasure. "You bring 3 people to distract her. I don't want to see her." "Understood." The subordinates immediately received the order and quickly left. At this time, the purple-clothed man narrowed his phoenix eyes and randomly chose a direction. He lightly tapped his toes and jumped over. And that direction was also the east gate. Chapter 99. Hualing, what do you think of this thing? Chu Qingyan felt that she had to have a good relationship with the people by Big Ice Cube's side, so she took out a hat and asked him. Hualing's eyes had been looking around the entire time. Hearing the little princess call him, he turned around and his lips twitched. "This green hat. Good looking," Hualing insincerely replied. "Really?" Chu Qingyan revealed a smile and instantly stuffed the thing into his chest. "I'll give it to you if you like it, no need to be polite." Hualing's eyes widened as he looked at the hat in his chest. Who would wear a green hat for no reason? Wouldn't they be laughed at by others? Then again, he didn't have a family yet, so wasn't the little princess cursing him? Chu Qingyan threw her hand at him and didn't care about him anymore. She was still looking for treasures, and when she finished, she turned around to find Hualing holding the hat frozen in place. She curiously asked, "Hualing, you don't like it?" "I think it's pretty good. In the summer, yellow, pink, and green are very eye-catching and comfortable to look at. If you wear these colors on the road, you'll definitely attract the attention of many girls. It would attract many gazes, but that wasn't admiration, but rather sneering disdain." "All right, little princess." But this was a gift from the little princess, so even if it was gold thread, he had to swallow it. I like it a lot." He liked it so much that he wanted to die. So Hualing held the green hat and wanted to cry. This was the first gift Hualing received from the little princess. It really was a day worth remembering. A green hat. Along the way, Chu Qingyan bought many things for herself and the servants by her side, as well as some things for Big Ice Cube. But when she wanted to buy something else for Hualing, he had a face that said he didn't want it. Chu Qingyan instantly curled her lips. It was rare for her to come out, and Big Ice Cube gave her a lot of silver, saying that she could get more from the steward if it wasn't enough. She wanted to buy some things for the people by her side, but it was a pity that Huo Ling didn't appreciate it. Forget it, she would just buy it for herself. Along the way, they arrived at the gathering place. People came and went, shoulder to shoulder, and it was very lively. Huo Ling, who had been paying attention to the surroundings, suddenly saw two black figures flash by on the roof. He narrowed his eyes and gave orders to the palace's guards before silently following them. It was rare for Chu Qingyan and Xining to come out to play, so they didn't pay attention to their surroundings. In addition, it was crowded with people, so they didn't notice that someone was missing. When Chu Qing picked up a mask and turned around to ask for the opinion of the people around him, he discovered that Xining, Huo Ling, and the others had already disappeared. Behind them was a stream of strangers. Huo Ling, Xining, Chu Qingyan called out a few times, but no one responded. Chu Qingyan raised her brows. Where did everyone go? At this moment, the stall owner asked, "Little prince, do you still want this mask?" Chu Qingyan turned around when she heard this. She raised the mask in her hand and replied with a smile, "I want this mask. Give me that mask too." She pointed at another mask. The stall owner agreed with a smile. After Chu Qingyan paid the money, she took the golden boy and jade girl masks and turned around to look for the missing people. But after looking for a while, she couldn't find a single person. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but frown. Perhaps they were also looking for her while she was looking for them. How about she just wait for them here? Otherwise, what would she do if she got lost? After making up her mind, Chu Qingyan decided to find a safe corner and wait for them to find her. However, just as she took a step forward, a few children rushed towards her. The one in front knocked right into her waist, and she staggered a few steps back. The golden mask in her hand was knocked away, and it spun in mid-air before flying towards the entrance of a small alley. Chu Qingyan held her waist and looked at the naughty children with a helpless expression. Then she walked towards the alley. It was really when one was unlucky. Even walking on the road would cause one to be hit. Chu Qingyan had just picked up her mask and was about to blow away the dust on it when she heard a strange gust of wind coming from the quiet alley. Her heart skipped a beat. In novels, quiet alleys were the best places to kill and rob. Could it be that she had coincidentally bumped into one of them? Then she had to run quickly. She grabbed the mask tightly and didn't dare to look back. She pretended to be calm and walked back the way she came. Suddenly, the alley wind mixed with an inexplicable chill hit her. She felt a chill on her back. When she wanted to run, she couldn't break free from a force that hugged her waist. She widened her eyes and wanted to shout. The person seemed to have sensed her intention and covered her mouth with a hand. Her body stuck close to the person behind her, and with a spin, she flew up and landed on a sycamore tree nearby. The person holding her captive casually found a branch to sit down, and she sat in his arms with her back leaning against him. The dense leaves of the sycamore tree blocked her figure. From this angle, she could see the person below, but the person below couldn't see the person hiding here. Chu Qingyan's heart almost jumped to her throat. But she felt that although the person behind her was holding her hostage, he didn't do any harm to her. She calmed down a little. At this time, 3 or 4 figures appeared at the alley's entrance. The leader was a woman in red. Where is he? I clearly saw him coming here. How could he disappear in the blink of an eye? The woman in red was flustered and exasperated. Miss, young Master Dongting always comes and goes without a trace. This time we are so close. I'm afraid he will run away even more. The maid in black beside the woman in red immediately said. It was so difficult to find him, but he ran away again. It's so annoying. Next time I will catch him. The woman in red stomped her feet and angrily turned to leave with her people. Chu Qingyan's eyes widened as she looked at the scene beneath the tree. After the red-robed lady and her entourage had left, she realized that the hand that was holding her loosened. The person behind her was also not as tense as before. He seemed to have relaxed. At this time, Chu Qingyan heard the person behind her murmur, "I finally got rid of this evil woman." The voice was charming, like a night elf singing in a low voice. Chu Qingyan sighed inwardly. What an elegant and magnetic voice. Since it was to get rid of people, it shouldn't be a threat to her. Chu Qingyan moved her body. The person behind her saw that and loosened his grip on her. Chu Qingyan wanted to turn her head, but suddenly stopped. What if she saw his real face? What if he became angry and killed her? So Chu Qingyan turned her back to him and said, "Hero, can you send me down?" Because she was disguised as a man, she called herself me. Hero? The person behind her repeated these two words with interest. It was the first time he was called a hero. He seemed to be very amused. He leaned close to her ear and chuckled, "This young master is not a hero, but a demon. Demons only do bad things. So I'm only responsible for sending you up, not sending you down." His playful words made Chu Qingyan's shoulders stiffen. And the fragrance of the flowers was somewhat familiar. Chapter 100. Chu Qingyan didn't have time to think about the floral fragrance. She only felt that this person was so overbearing and rude. She said somewhat angrily, "Since that's the case, then I'll go down myself." Chu Qingyan was too lazy to waste her breath with him. She looked down at the parasol tree that was at least 2 stories tall and swallowed her saliva. She hugged the tree trunk with both hands and was about to slide down. The person behind her didn't seem to expect her to do this. He raised his eyebrows and lifted her up, placing her back on the branch. Chu Qingyan only felt the world spin, and then she was changed in another direction. When she opened her eyes, she saw the person in front of her. When she saw the person clearly, she was stunned. His eyes were elegant, and his lips were bright and alluring. Wearing a purple robe, coupled with those devilish phoenix eyes and charming temperament, he was simply an evildoer. The jade pool was second to none, and his zifu was unparalleled. She couldn't help but think of a poem, "There was a beauty in the north, peerless and independent. A glance could topple a city, and another glance could topple a country." But when she saw that there was an Adam's apple on that smooth neck, she instantly widened her eyes. So this wasn't a beauty, but an evildoer youth. Recalling that someone had called him young Master Dongting, she finally recovered from the shock of the beauty being a man. Higashio Motetsu, who had long been accustomed to being stared at like this, raised his eyebrows. He put his hands behind his head and leaned against the tree trunk. He lazily said to her, "If you want to cripple your leg, then jump. This young master won't stop you." Chu Qingyan was stunned for a moment, then she looked at the person in front of her. "This one has no grievances with you. It's this one's bad luck to be held hostage by you. If young master is willing to send this one down, then we won't owe each other anything today. If we meet again in the future, we'll go our separate ways. What does young master think?" When Higashio Motetsu heard this, he finally looked at the youth in front of him. He was fearless in the face of danger and moved with reason and emotion. It really didn't seem like the intelligence and rationality that a 10-year-old child should have. Red lips, white teeth, and fair makeup. It had to be said that the youth in front of him had a likable face. Higashio Motetsu playfully teased her, "What if I'm not willing?" The smile on Chu Qingyan's face stiffened, then she became angry. "You don't want me to go down, and you don't want to send me down. What do you want to do?" "What I don't want to do is being willful." Higashio Motetsu. She didn't know when he had taken the mask, but he didn't to her face, revealing his charming phoenix eyes as his face. Her tis tea to twos, she to reason to the points to, and not to waste her to speak, she also closed her eyes and leaned against the tree, likes, to stop speak. He, to her to stop, he twos to, t to, he, He tests that and then he to be mocked her. Twos. He to she, he. To be's to be towned by himself, to. Don't tell me you don't want to go down. Chu Qingyan crossed her arms and looked at him. So what if I talk? So what if I don't talk? Don't tell me you'll let me go down if I talk to you for a bit. That's not impossible. Higashio Motetsu took off the mask on his face and smiled evilly. Chu Qingyan didn't want to bother with him. Maybe this person was bored to death and wanted to tease her. As long as she ignored him, he would feel bored and leave. Seeing Chu Qingyan's silence, Higashio Motetsu suddenly felt that this youth was really interesting. It was rare to see such a cute youth in Sichuan. Just as he was about to tease her again, he suddenly heard a few calls from below. Miss, Master. Hearing this voice, Chu Qingyan knew that Xining and the others had come to look for her. She immediately wanted to open her mouth and say that she was on the tree, but a hand suddenly appeared out of nowhere and covered her mouth. Her hands were locked behind her back and the cold book cover couldn't suppress her anger. She angrily glared at the person in front of her and said to him with her eyes, "What do you want to do?" "Fun, willful." He answered her with his lips. When Chu Qingyan understood his lips, she was furious, but she knew that she couldn't do anything to him. At this time, Xining's voice had gradually faded away. Perhaps because she didn't respond, he thought that she wasn't here and went somewhere else to look for her. So at this time, Chu Qingyan simply ignored him. Higashio Motetsu felt those soft lips against his palm, bringing about a itch. He restrained himself and saw that those people had gone far away before he released his grip on her. His eyes looked at her playfully. "You're a girl." Although it was a question, his tone was certain. "So what if I am, so what if I'm not?" Chu Qingyan indifferently replied. "Nothing much." Higashio Motetsu lazily leaned against the tree trunk, his hands still playing with her mask. He then looked up at her and asked with a teasing smile, "Little girl, why don't you follow this young master and travel freely?" Chu Qingyan tightly clung to the tree trunk behind her, looking at him with a vigilant expression. Seeing that Chu Qingyan was like a hedgehog with spikes all over her body, Higashio Motetsu suddenly smiled, like a rose blooming on a white jade wall, dazzling and frightening. "What are you afraid of? It's not like I want to eat you." The more he said, the worse it got. Chu Qingyan looked into his eyes and said disdainfully, "Follow by your side and be your servant girl? Eat and sleep in the open? Be hunted down all day long?" Higashio Motetsu seemed to have heard a funny thing, as he gave a low laugh and then clarified, "Following by my side, even if you have the identity of a servant girl, you'll have a more comfortable life than a young miss of an aristocratic family. Eating and sleeping in the open is impossible, you'll only have a table full of fine wine and a table full of delicacies. Things like being hunted down will only happen occasionally." Chu Qingyan didn't know if what he said was true or false, but to her, it didn't matter. She met his devilish phoenix eyes and said clearly, "This little girl still prefers a peaceful and steady life. Many thanks for young master's good intentions." Higashio Motetsu saw that this little girl was stubborn and felt that it was even more interesting. But seeing that it was getting late, he raised his hand and pinched her pink cheeks. "Forget it, I'll take it that you have eyes but can't see gold and jade." Chu Qingyan felt that this person's touch was really annoying. Just as she was about to slap his hand away, she fell into his embrace and jumped down from the tree. When she steadied herself, that person had already left. "Little girl, if fate wills it, we'll meet again." Chu Qingyan turned around and only had time to see that person's back facing her as he shook the mask in his hand. Then with a stomp of his feet, he turned into a purple wind and disappeared into the sea of people. Chu Qingyan pinched the jade maiden mask in her hand, feeling somewhat indignant. What a strange person. She hoped that they wouldn't meet again until they died of old age. But who knows, when you want to find a person, you won't be able to find them even if you climb over mountains. And when you don't want to see a person, you'll meet them wherever you go. However, many years later, that person's hand caressed the golden maiden mask, his expression complex yet gentle. When the golden wind and the jade do meet, it will surpass countless people in the human world. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.